Welcome to Phil Phails. My name is Philip Jones, and today my guest is Ashley Eaves, RDN CPT. She's a functional nutritionist, registered dietitian, personal trainer, and gut specialist. Wave to everybody, Ashley. They live in
Thanks for having me.
All these cameras. That's where they live. Today, Phil Phails at Functional Health. Yeah, we're going to talk about functional health.
Yes.
Through the lens of, what is functional health? Like, what is functional medicine?
Yeah.
I know that's probably a huge question. You could just like elevator pitch it.
Yeah, that is
like,
a huge
how do you separate functional health from like other?
Well, in my mind, it's separating functional versus clinical. And that may not necessarily be like a, black versus white distinction, but clinically, a lot of times when we look at health, you're either diseased or not diseased.
Okay.
That's it, right? So I also think lab work, right? So is it within range or not within range?
Okay.
But there's also, maybe it's within range, but maybe it's not optimal. So there's that piece of it, I think, as being functional. The other part for me is the sustainability, lifestyle, longevity piece. So like it also incorporates a lot of different pieces. So for nutrition, as a dietitian, it's not just food. It's also what you look like on the inside. It's how you move your body outside of exercise, like how you think about your body. It's your stress levels. It's all encompassing because the insides of our bodies are complex, but we are complex people. And so to be healthy, it's not just nutrition. It's not just the food you put in your mouth, and it's not just movement, but there's a lot of layers to it. Mm-hmm. And so it's really approaching it from all the layers. What do you do for work? Are you happy at work? What do you do in your pastime? Do you have joy? That's actually something I ask my clients a lot. Like, are there things in your life that bring you joy? You'd be surprised how many people are like, no, I'm just like going through the motions of like work and kids and sleep and husband or whatever. And you're like, oh, we're missing like a big piece. Do you have depth, spirituality, not necessarily religion, right? But do you have like spirituality? I think that brings another like layer to someone's overall health. So when I think of functional health, it's all encompassing of all those different layers.
Yeah, because stress seems to impact physical health.
100%.
What I've been reading is it'll change the way you store fat, whether it's visceral or regular. It changes a lot of different things, and it impacts your longevity.
Yeah, stress is inflammation. Okay, stress is inflammation.
It's inflammation.
It's inflammation. That is what it is. And yes, it can raise the cortisol in your body, which impacts how you store fat. And because fat is a fuel, right, in the body, yeah. and our bodies like to protect ourselves. And so if you think in the most basic sense of like caveman times, our, stress was back in the day, really dumbing this down, but being able to run from a bear.
You had to survive back in the day.
You had to survive, run from the saber-toothed tiger, right?
Yeah,
Your body needs that.
Yeah.
You also had to go through feast and famine.
Right.
And so stress at the time might be, there's a bear running after me. So the body's like, okay, let me shut down digestion because we don't need to pee if we're trying to live.
Right.
Like I just need you to run
fast.
So let me also pour a bunch of glucose into your muscles to help you run.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to like jump up the cortisol. We're going to like slow down all the organs because right now we just need to live.
So you shut down systems in order to survive.
They slow them down immensely. Right. Well, most of the time a bear's not going to come through that window.
We have paper tigers now.
Right. And so, but our bodies are still protecting ourselves in the same way. And so then our digestion's slowing down. So there's a huge imbalance there.
But we're still giving it a bunch of input.
Right. And so then our digestion slows down. So then that one burger and fries might not process as well because everybody's like, we're going to like focus on the heart pumping and
because something at work or something relationally.
And so, so we create all this inflammation, and then we're more likely to not be able to fight off, carcinogens. And so then we go down the whole path of cancer, and we store more fat. We're not able to burn fat because our body's protecting itself. It's also, stress is a killer in and of itself. And biologically, it makes sense. And so that's why, you know, as we coming full circle back to functional health, that's why it's not like I can tell you what to eat all day long, but if your stress is through the roof, then you're not absorbing those nutrients through your gut, and you're not able to burn the fat if that's one of the things that you want to do. And then we don't have the balance in our bodies. You're not going to recover as well from exercise. Our brains don't work as well because they're in fight or flight. And so,
Sounds like holistic.
Yeah.
Functional.
Holistic, functional. I would say those are synonyms.
Are they? Okay.
Sure. I don't know. It feels good to me.
Feels good to me. I think what I heard holistic meant was you take into consideration 3 or 4 things. One of them is your diagnosis, or like what your state is, whether it's, you've got these personality disorders, you've got these diseases, you've got these kind of things that are happening in your body. And then you have your community, like what's happening socially, which I think of like that stress and all that. That's a relational thing. Sure. And then what was the third thing? How happy
you are in your relationship makes a difference.
That's all social kind of like.
And community, that's what I talked, it's like the joy piece too. If you don't have that connection, whether it be in some community or whatever, you're lacking that joy piece. And it's all. So I would say, in my mind, I'm sure you could go like more clinical, functional, and other, but in my mind, functional and holistic are the same. We're looking at the full picture.
You're looking at the full picture.
Yeah.
It's a lifestyle thing, because in order to find optimal health, it's not just one puzzle piece. It's like a bunch of them. Yeah. In my mind, on the show, part of my journey is realizing optimal health. And I look at, for myself, movement. I look a lot at nutrition. I look a lot at sleep. Yeah. And then also it's mind, body, and spirit is kind of like the topics. Sure. But within those, there's like subsections, right? Yeah. With the body and with mind, there's that like nutrition, sleep, and movement. Yeah. What other ones would go in there? What am I missing?
So that's when I think a lot of how I describe this to clients is a triangle. So I approach a client, I'm like, I'm going to look at 3 different points of the triangle. One is going to be the external piece. This is food, what you're putting in your body. So still external in my mind, right? Obviously the inside's a different piece, but externally, what food you are physically putting in your mouth and how you are moving your body. So that's exercise, but it's not just exercise.
It's input and output.
Right. So the external part of that is, so movement, I will say exercise, but also this is what your day-to-day looks like. Are we sitting at a desk? Are you standing? Are you at a standing desk? Are you out talking with clients? And that makes a big difference.
Right.
So that's the external piece. Then there's the internal piece. Mm-hmm. The internal piece is lab work. So typically blood work. GI mapping for me is one of the things that I do a lot of. So looking at your microbiome, and I can talk more about that, but another internal piece there, potentially looking at hormones and the methylation pathways of that, which I find a lot more prevalent in women than men, especially.
Methylation pathways?
Methylation. It's
methylation pathways. Wow.
Yeah. So basically how the hormones are breaking down and the pathways they're going through and how well they do that, right? Okay. So think of a drain. We want to make sure things are flowing and going through the drain properly. They're not getting stuck anywhere.
Okay.
And so I would say I mostly work with, I would say my niche is people between the ages of 40 and 60 primarily. That's not to say I don't have funds out of that, but I would say most of my people are 40 and 60. And for my women clients, that is prime time for perimenopause and menopause. Right. And that is very impactful on mind and body and spirit. And so that's another internal piece. So that's the internal piece that I look at. And then the last one I usually say is the mind. But that is stress, how you process stress, but also what your beliefs are. Like if you do not believe your body can change, I promise your body will put every stop to it.
This is mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why I say all encompassing mind, because stress isn't necessarily mindset. Like you might have actually my
Yeah, you
dog
might have
died, I lost
stressors.
my job,
Right, right.
but
But the
stress is
beliefs
impactful.
part is really, what are the stories you tell yourself
What
about
are
your body? What are the stories you
Absolutely.
tell yourself about your mind?
Absolutely.
Do you believe in neuroplasticity?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, can you change?
And yeah, do you believe your body can change? Do
Yeah.
you believe it's possible for your body? Because if you don't, or if anyone doesn't,
We got to work on
then
that.
well, then your body will stop it. Our minds are powerful, and I refer to this a lot. I don't know if any of you or you have seen the show House. I don't even know if it's on
Yeah, I
anymore.
watched House back in the day.
Back in the day. And there was, probably several episodes, but one that I remember really well, somebody was sick and they did all these tests, they couldn't find anything. And then, another person was. And I don't want to quite go into hypochondriac, but all these people had moved in the state where they thought they were sick. And then they were creating physical symptoms in their body because of their mind. The mind is powerful.
Yeah.
And if you think that you have a brain tumor, you can give yourself headaches and you may not have any, tumor. And anyway, so there is,
Placebos work a percentage of the time.
and it goes both ways, right? Which is why I strongly believe in also the Patch Adams approach. If you believe your body can heal, your body will try, but you have to give it half a chance. And part of that is from the mind. You have to believe that you can.
Yeah.
But also that correlates to like physical things too, right? Because if you don't believe that going to the gym will build muscle on you, then also how easy is it going to be to put on your tennis shoes and walk out the door?
Right.
So then it translates to physical things too.
Right. Because it moves itself to behavior. It
does.
leads to behavior.
And so I mean, this is such a random ADD tangent where I'm going here. But it's, I don't know. Now I lost it. I was like talking about that.
That's okay.
I lost the tangent.
That's how the mindset is really important.
Yeah.
It's like a huge part of it. And the story I thought about was people that get like stuck on a mountain or out in the woods, and the thing that like carries them to civilization or to safety is like just this belief that they'll be with their partner again, or some like driving thing is fueling their like last steps.
Yeah. Oh, I
like the guy on Everest. There was this one guy that actually was overnight. I recently watched a movie about Everest.
Yeah.
And it was like, this guy, there was no way this guy should have survived.
Sure. Yeah.
But it was just through sheer willpower.
Which I also think, which actually goes into what I forgot briefly what I was going to say is about willpower. But before I say that, I actually don't believe it's just willpower. But I'll pause on that to say this is also where I think that connection, relationships, and community make a big difference.
Yes.
Because then they're like, can my body physically survive this or whatever? But sometimes people are much more willing, and again, I hate to go down the gender path, but especially the women that I work with are so set on giving to their husband and kids or whatever that they put themselves last. Mm-hmm. And so, but again, if they're willing to do something for someone else, for themselves, for someone else. So sometimes, whatever they're on Everest, like I want to live for this person.
Yeah.
Right. So it's more than just themselves. And I think that connection is really powerful.
Yeah.
But coming full circle back to willpower, I actually tell my clients all the time, I don't believe in just willpower. I'm not saying there's not an aspect of that, because I do think there is an aspect of, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps and putting your tennis shoes on and walking out the door, for sure.
Yeah.
But what I tell my clients is it's so much more about setup. And so this is where we get into strategy, because if someone tries to change a habit based on sheer willpower, it's not going
to last.
It's not usually sustainable. They
needs
might
to be lifestyle.
Pull themselves to the gym or eat healthy for a month or two, but then all their demons or all the things that got them to where they were in the first place
come disrupt it. You have to do it enough times for it to become a ritual or a habit in your life.
But you have to get to the root of how things changed in the first place.
Huh.
So let's say it's stress eating. Just choosing not to stress eat isn't sustainable, because then I always tell my clients, I'm like, dogs will die, jobs will be lost.
Dude, you're talking about the power of habit or atomic habit. Have you read those books?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because what we're talking about is basically we have a maladaptive coping strategy.
Sure. Absolutely.
How do we like put something else in there where you get the support you need, you get the soothing, you get the nourishment of whatever that action is, without some of these consequences that we're not wanting.
Absolutely. And so, and how can we achieve the same thing in a healthier way?
Right.
So, if you're stress eating, one of the things I tell my clients all the time, if because most of us, I will say, anybody who's ever reached for food when they're not hungry.
Yeah. Which is like most
us
of the time, probably.
No,
That we're bored.
that we're not hungry.
Right.
Right. But like, I don't care. Right.
And we don't know why we're doing it.
Maybe, which is
It's like, I'm just bored. I just want to.
Well, there's a lot of reasons why people grab food.
Right.
So, I usually boil it down to comfort, relaxation, escape. I have a fourth one. It'll come back to me. Comfort, relaxation, escape are some of the big ones. Or dopamine rush is the fourth one. Okay. So comfort.
Well, probably all of those lead to a dopamine rush, right?
For sure.
Comfort is like dopamine.
Well, no, but we're seeking dopamine. But sometimes, I would say more often than not, you can categorize utilizing food in one of those three ways if you're stress eating most of the time. But every now and then, it's just the dopamine rush. It feels good. I just want to feel good right now.
Like coffee or sugar, a bunch of sugar.
Yeah.
Okay.
But more often than not, it actually based in one of those three. So comfort, let's say you've had, whatever. It's, I don't know, your dog died, right? So, and I want to feel good.
Or you're at home for the holidays.
Right. And I want to feel good, which like you said, it does. In turn, you get that dopamine rush. Yeah. It actually does give us, when we eat, we get a dopamine rush. Mm-hmm. But also, food has always and will always be used for pleasure and celebration, right? We use it for birthdays. We use it for weddings. Mm-hmm. It is culturally
potlucks. Yeah, it's a part of our society.
And I'm not trying to change that.
Nope.
And I think that is important.
Right.
However, we then remember that association. And so we're like, oh, okay, so let me eat. So physically, it does give us a dopamine rush.
So it's almost like we're inviting a little celebration in our day.
Yeah.
Because we know it's about celebration. I need to pick me up. I'm just celebrate with food.
Yeah. And or relaxation, end of the day. Oh, it's been a really hard day. Or even reward. Oh, that was another kind of one mixed in there. But that can be relaxation or reward. I had a really hard day at work. I'm going to reward myself with a glass of wine and a piece of cake or whatever, and so, which could be relaxation. Oh my God, it's been a long day. I want my, cube of ice with my whiskey while I sit down and relax. So, and then there's escape. So hard emotions, right? I'm going through a divorce or
distract
or whatever, and I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to process it. So I'm gonna go and eat a plate of lasagna or whatever.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I think is really important is, and most of the time, all of these people know, I don't need this plate of lasagna. I don't need this glass of wine. I don't need this chocolate cake. But choosing something else is almost foreign.
Because you don't have any models for it.
You don't models for it. And also, food is the Red Bull of dopamine rush. Because I can walk right to the fridge and eat a bite and immediately.
It's always there.
Yeah.
It has always been accessible.
And it's been successful.
Yeah.
Quick. So, but is Red Bull really the best option for an energy boost? Long-term, sustainably? Probably not. No offense, Red Bull drinkers. But that said, so one of the things that I like to help people do is, first thing is ask, what are you seeking? If you can recognize in that moment, I am reaching for that glass of wine, that piece of chocolate cake, those noodles, those French fries, whatever. I'm not hungry, but I'm doing it anyway. Sure, a lot of us choose, I don't care. I want to feel good, whatever. I'm doing this anyway. But if you can take a pause, which is hard, which this is where that little bit of willpower comes in, because ultimately you still have to want to be healthier.
You have to train awareness.
You have to have the awareness, but you have to want it.
You have to want it.
You have to want
Absolutely.
Want to be
you
healthier.
You gotta want it.
You have to want to be healthier. So let's say you do want to be healthier. Can you take that pause and say, what am I seeking right now?
Yeah, what do I want?
Am I seeking comfort? Am I seeking connection? Am I seeking just a dopamine rush? Am I seeking escape?
Celebrate.
Do I want to celebrate? Or maybe a combination of all of those. Because sometimes it is. I want to escape this emotion. I want to feel good. I want to whatever, all these things. So what I have people do is all right, let's make a list of all the things that you can think of. I'm talking brain dump.
Yeah.
Can we just brain dump anything at all in your life that brings you comfort, relaxation, joy? Can you dump anything that is not food or drink?
Right.
Or drugs.
Right.
So, can you brainstorm healthier options. No, it won't be the dopamine rush. No, it won't be perfect the first time or the second time. But if you can make a list, so let's just say
Might be a dopamine rush. There's things you can do that aren't food and drink that could give you dopamine.
Absolutely. So as I'm saying, can you brain dump all of these things on paper? Can it be calling a friend?
Yeah,
Can
that's
it
what I was
be
thinking. Like
journaling? Can it be meditation? Can it
a
be
walk,
blaring music and
getting into the
singing out
sun,
loud?
going and rock climbing, or
barefoot feet in the grass? Can it be a bubble bath?
Taking a bath, Go get a massage.
Go get a massage. Can it be, I really like creative things. So
do some art or play some
coloring,
music.
play music, all those things. And a lot of times people maybe have these tools but haven't used them in forever.
Yeah.
So one of the things I say,
because they're adults now.
Go get an adult coloring book.
We don't
some
color
colored
anymore.
pencils.
Yeah.
I promise you'll feel better. Or try meditation. Again, it's not going to be perfect the first time.
No.
That's another thing. I've trained people in meditation. It's hard to get into, but it's real powerful if you can work it. But it's like a muscle.
Yeah.
You know, it's not something that's going to happen overnight.
Start with 3 minutes.
And so this is where willpower meets setup, because, okay, we've now made a list. Put it on your phone. Put it in the notes section of your phone. And
laminate it all over the house.
Laminate it all over the house. And so then when you find yourself in this moment of like, I want that glass of whiskey, I want those French fries or whatever, can you take pause? Can you just try? Give yourself, set a timer for 20 minutes, okay? And try 1 or 3 of these things. Can you distract yourself with some of these things? And in 20 minutes, when that alarm goes off, do you still need those French fries?
Give it to yourself if you still need it. But
you still need it.
This is the start. This is a ritual behavior of like you're choosing something different and you're taking a step down that pathway.
Yeah.
And I think of Viktor Frankl, the Man's Search for Meaning, the author.
Yeah.
He talks about between stimuli and response, there lies a point where you can choose, you can make a choice. And what you're inviting them to do is make a choice.
Yeah.
And where I think a lot of times we get on autopilot. We go to the refrigerator and we don't even realize we've done it.
Sure.
We go grab the chips. We don't even realize we've done it. We just have them in our face.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, I want to invite mindfulness,
Sure.
present moment, thoughtful, intentionality, all those words into this experience.
Yeah.
So realize that you've got some agency there, and then choose something different and try it. It's like F around and find out.
Yeah. So this is where that setup, I think, is important, and that little bit of willpower, because yes, you have to want to be healthier, right? In some aspect or another. And I don't necessarily mean in like weight, but like I want to deal with my stress in a healthier way, right? Like you have to want to be healthier. So there's that's the willpower piece. You have to want it. But then there's the setup of making the list, right? Of making it easily accessible.
Yeah.
And then you talk about,
it needs to be closer than the food.
It needs to be closer than the food.
At least the list, you know?
Right. But then there's also that connecting the bridge of it so we have the list, but you talked about the awareness. So then that's where maybe food logging is helpful, because sometimes I'm like, okay, let's log food because let's see where it is. Well, sometimes people are having like a bite of their kids, like goldfish here and there, not thinking about it, right? Or they're stress eating and not thinking about it. Like that cognizant awareness isn't fully there. So then, and I'm not saying everybody needs to log food, but that is one thing that I often do with clients is have them log food to create awareness, because then when they're about to walk to that fridge, they're like, wait, do I want to put that in the log? Like, do I want to put that in the log? And then they're like, okay, wait, why am I reaching for this? Okay, Ashley, I'll try one of the things on the list.
Ritual is an invitation into present moment.
Right.
And food logging can be that invitation that to the present moment and to your behavior around food.
Or it's just working with me and wanting to be healthier overall. And so they're like, ooh, now I have to share that, or I'm going to share that. And so I joke with people and say that whether you log it in a log app or on a piece of paper, your body logs it.
Yeah.
So it's being logged.
You're getting the impact of it.
Right. And so how do we
external food in?
Yeah. And so then how do we create that awareness to what we're doing, and then dive into, okay, what am I seeking? And then how do I retrain this habit? And so that's when we go into repetition. I do not believe in willpower of like, I'm just not going to stress it anymore.
Right.
Well, that's not. We need to replace it with something, because your body's still seeking.
Absolutely.
Your body's still seeking the comfort.
You need it.
And we probably need those healthier outlets. You probably need an outlet to be playing music or coloring if you're not. And that's another like crazy, almost mind-blowing, sad thing is I can't tell you how many people I have. And I'm like, do you have any hobbies that
We're talking about enrichment.
Yeah. Do you have any hobbies that bring you joy?
Yes.
And it's wild how many people are like, no. I'm like, well, now we have a task.
That's the first thing.
We
need to find some hobbies.
Let's find some things that bring you joy. And because sometimes the stress eating might be for lack of connection and lack of community. And, they just need other ways to feel whole and full.
I would venture to guess a super majority of Americans, at least, haven't felt true hunger in a long time.
Oh, a long time.
They might think in the morning they feel hungry,
Yeah.
but I imagine they're still processing food. If you eat 3 times a day, a standard American diet, which I love that the acronym is SAD.
Yes.
They never experience hunger.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't even know. Yeah, they wouldn't know. What they're interpreting as hunger is not.
Yeah. Of course, also there's layers of hunger because that's also something I talk to clients about. I want to help re-regulate their hunger and fullness cues. And so there's a layer of like being hungry for another meal and for blood sugar maintenance. I think that's important, right? But then there's like true hunger, right? But I tell people a lot that a good test, and I don't know, I actually think my dad's the one who said this years ago. I mean, I'm sure lots of people have said this, but for whatever reason, this has stuck with me. If you are truly hungry, an apple sounds amazing, right?
Yeah.
Like an apple. And of course, I think apples are delicious anyway. But in general, if you are truly hungry, and I'm not talking about like starvation hungry. I'm like, if it's just been too long without food and you're like truly hungry, an apple is perfect.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're just like munchy and want like a little relaxation or just want a little dopamine rush, then I don't want an apple. I want some potato chips or whatever, right?
Right.
And so I'm always like, I don't know.
There's that saying, you know what the best ingredient for a meal is?
What's that?
Hunger.
Oh, right. Perfect.
If you're really hungry,
I don't know.
Whatever you have is going to taste good.
Perfect.
Yeah, this is so delicious.
Yeah. I think we've all been there. I think a lot of us have been there, go on some like long hiking trip or whatever. You don't have enough food. And then you get to the next meal that maybe is prepared for you or it's like, dehydrated out of a bag and you're like, this is the best thing.
Yeah. This is like an MRI or something. You're like, oh my God.
Okay, this is so good.
Yeah.
Like body just needs sustenance.
Yeah. And it's gonna
fuel.
Convert that to pleasure.
Yeah.
We needed it bad.
Or just like energy and then dopamine rush.
Dopamine rush.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do, let's go through a couple questions that do some lists.
Yeah.
One of them's going to be, what type of information do you take in when it comes to those external, internal, and mindset? Like, what are the bioindicators or what are the kind of social indicators for you to figure out? Because you're creating a map of these folks.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other thing is like, how do you get to the why with folks? Because I imagine that's really important.
Yeah.
Why people are doing it, what motivates them. While everything you do is going to move people towards optimal health.
Yeah.
The why is going to probably impact how you communicate with them.
It's going to impact rapport, but it's also going to impact
the prescription.
Why they're doing it. What their follow through, I'll say.
Yeah.
Their belief.
What might be, their mindset, their belief.
Yeah, I think it influences a lot of things.
What might get a hook in them.
Yeah. And not even just for working with me, but for them to create change, they need to know like really why they're creating change.
Yeah, they have to believe it.
I'm not saying there isn't a vanity piece for, I'll say everybody.
Beach bod.
We all want to look good.
I want to look good. I want to look good.
We all have a vanity piece, but the vanity piece actually isn't, for most people, is not a super sustainable driver.
It's not.
But more often than not, people have a reason. There's heart disease in the family, or they want to be able to like run and hike with their kids, or they want to be like really active grandparents, or there's a lot of reasons. They want enlightenment. I don't know, but there's like deeper layers to that.
We're going to talk about that one. Yeah. Then we're going to talk about the how, which is kind of how you approach strategy and how you like communicate that with the folks you work with. And then we'll talk kind of about my situation and showcase what that might look like for my what, why, and how.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Is that cool?
Yeah, great.
Okay, let's start with the data.
Yeah.
Like how do you get information about what's going on for them?
Intake or assessment. So I will say I get that in a couple of ways. Typically, not always, but typically I will do an initial free consultation. And so I get a little bit, for me to know the person, I get a little bit of data that way. So, and this is just conversation. And very on a surface level. What do you why are you talking to me? What do you want to accomplish?
That's where you get your why.
Well,
you get some of your why there.
Like top layer.
Surface level. Okay.
Layer of why. What do you want to accomplish?
Yeah.
I want to lose 20 pounds, whatever. Or I want a 6-pack abs or right. Yeah. So basic level of what brought you to my doorstep.
Yeah.
Right? Why are you here? Why are you here and what do you want to accomplish? Sometimes if people are fairly insightful, they might know. My dad died of a heart attack or whatever, blah, blah, blah. They might dive into their deep
Yeah,
why.
my dad got dementia really early, and I want to have good brain health.
Yeah. I would say most people don't hit their deep why initially. So, but why are you here? What do you want to accomplish? And so I get a little bit of their story of, how much they weigh, how old they are. I might get a little bit of their, family life, again, surface level. Then I'll do an actual intake. So that I send them a, 3 to 5 page long intake.
Yeah.
I don't really know exactly. I want to say it's 5 pages long. And this asks, I would say height and weight and age, asks about their day-to-day. What do they do for work? And we talk about this too, but I initially get it on paper. So what do they do to work? Are they sedentary? Do they do shift work? What is do they do exercise? What does it look like and for how many minutes? I initially have them do at least a 24-hour recall of their food. I want you to tell me what you ate yesterday. Because I don't, and then typically I'll have people log food after that before we really get started. I prefer like a 7-day log of food and I try as best you can. I want you to eat like you usually do. I don't want you to think about it. I'm not giving you any parameters. I want you to if you stress eat. If you order pizza on Fridays, order pizza on Fridays. Like I want you to eat like you usually do as best you can in the same amounts and log it all.
You're getting a benchmark, right? Or you're getting where are we starting from?
But from the assessment, I say, I want you to write down everything you ate yesterday that you can recall. So that and times of day. I ask them what time they typically go to bed and what time they wake up. Ask them how much water they drink, if they drink caffeine and how much. And I'll initially ask, what are your top 3 on the sheet? What are your top 3 goals? If no barriers, right?
Yeah.
If I could wave a magic wand and give you your wildest dreams of health.
Brad Pitt Fight Club.
Yes. Then what would that be and how would you describe
Edward Norton, American History X.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
You know what I'm talking about. Y'all know what I'm talking about.
So what does that look like? And for some people, it might be, I want a good relationship with food. For some people, it might be the body. But anyway, what are your top 3 goals that you want to accomplish? And I'll say 12 months. Don't think about how you get there. If you could just wave a magic wand, what would this be? So I have them write that down. Then I go over just some basic kind of intake that you would usually do for a doctor. So like health history sort of stuff, going everything from anxiety to eating disorders to cholesterol to heart health and, all of those things. There's it's kind of a multiple choice question about things that I know relates, like, do they, feel bloated after they eat? And, some hormone questions. Do they have facial hair for women that they don't want? Do they have hair loss? Do they have bloating? Do they, sleep disturbances? Do they have insomnia? Anyway, I don't know. There's probably a good 20 questions there that just are a selective bubble, kind of like, always, sometimes never sort of thing. Which, and it puts it in topics like hormone health or gut health or whatever. And it just gives me kind of an overview. I'm trying to think if there's I ask about stress level 1 to 10, what's your stress and what are your stressors? I have them name that. So anyway, this is paper, right? Just coming off cuff from them. Can they name some of these things? But it gives me a pretty decent insight. Oh, and I also ask, do you have people to work out with? Do you have a community that is healthy? Do you have a community that's healthy? Yeah. I ask them if they have a community that's unhealthy, basically asking, are there people in your life bringing snacks or is it, at work from the workroom or your household. Like, what does the food look like in your household? Do you have people to exercise with? Do you have a support system around being healthy?
Yep.
Because doing it alone amidst a family and community that's not is really, 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 really hard.
Really.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's off the top of my head, kind of what that looks like. So we look at exercise, we look at day-to-day living and water and sleep and stress and food. And so I get all that. So on paper.
Yeah.
Then I do an initial call, and it is the longest call. So I have all this information, but just like you and I talking, it's different face to face.
Right.
And
So you're going over this intake with them.
yeah, but not top to bottom. I'm creating conversation.
Yeah.
Right. And so I might start with, hey, so I know all this about you. Thank you for all this information. I know all this about you. What are holes missing? Because sometimes face to face, you're like, oh, let me tell you about a history of me, people calling me fat when I was 10, or a history of my mom having an eating disorder and not bringing food in the house, or trauma in their past, or whatever. So some things might come up initially, but otherwise we're just creating conversation. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about, like your day to day. And so
Right.
I get a little more on conversation, or I might dig into some questions. So, you're on a statin. How long have you been on a statin? Oh, you have high cholesterol. How long has that been happening? Like what? And so then I might dig into like symptoms and how they feel in their energy levels. So I can kind of expand on some of that. And then I talk about like how I can help, right?
How long is that first kind of meeting after the intake?
An hour, but an hour to an hour and a half.
Yeah. It takes a while, right?
It
And
does.
you're building rapport, but you're also fleshing out this person's
So
lifestyle.
it really depends on, I am talkative, so I always tell them up front, I'm like, let's get started because I'll over talk. But if they're also talkative, then, then it might be an hour and a half.
Yeah.
But at least an hour to not only go through things, but then I'm also going to like give them some framework to start with.
Okay.
Let's get some initial framework. And so I will do, again, it really depends on their goals, right? And where they are and where they need to go. But it just massively does, because if somebody doesn't want to lose weight at all, it's going to change my approach if they just want to be healthy on like how much they're eating and all of that. But typically then I will go into exercise. So I do exercise prescription if they want it. Some people are like, I've got whatever, I'm doing CrossFit, or I'm in this group, or I do, whatever, all these things.
They're coming with some exercise.
And I don't want it to change. Like,
Right.
I like, don't mess with that.
I
That's
like what I'm
holy
doing.
grail.
Right.
Like, don't mess with it. Other people might have a good routine and they feel good about it, but they're like, I'm open. Do you have tweaks? Right. And so then again, depending on what they want to accomplish and where they are and where they're, and typically I won't have the inside piece yet. So this is just getting started. So typically at this point, I might recommend, okay, let's do some initial blood work, or can you do some through your doctor and then I'll review it. So
This is labs.
This is when I will order labs or have them get labs. But that usually takes a couple of weeks to get back at least,
Right.
If not more, depending on timing for like a woman's cycle and all of that. So that might be up to a month later before we get lab work back, or they might come in with lab work, and that's okay too. This is where if they're having GI stuff.
You do the GI mapping?
Yes. And so this is a whole other cat and caboodle, but honestly, I prefer to do a GI map on everybody.
Really?
Even if
It's really helpful for you?
so helpful for a look at their inside of their body. If I have somebody who's come to me who has done bodybuilding in the past, we're doing a GI map. If I have somebody who's had a past eating disorder, we're doing a GI map. If I have somebody who is doing everything right for the most part, like it looks really good on paper,
But they have
but
challenges.
they're having weight loss resistance or not able to build muscle, we're doing a GI map. Obviously, of course, like financially available, they're a bit wanting willingness to do it. But I really prefer to do it on everybody, because rarely is anyone's microbiome perfect. So usually
Are they expensive?
They're expensive.
How much is a GI map?
So off cuff, it's around $400 by
Okay.
itself, and that does not include a review of it. So like
Then
I'll
you
charge
review it, and that's like
review,
that's
that's
yeah,
another
that's a
additional
session,
cost.
right?
But by itself, it's around $400.
Okay.
And so yeah, they're pricey, but it shows pathogens, both bacterial and viral pathogens. It shows healthy bacteria. So we have bacteria that we want in our gut, but we also want it to be balanced. So you can have an imbalance of your healthy bacteria, which comes from stress, antibiotic use, poor diet, medical conditions, high toxin load. So somebody might be eating healthy and whatever, but the products they use on their hair and their face and breathing exhaust or living next to a power plant, it builds up over time.
Yeah.
So that can impact your gut. But stress is the primary one. If someone's highly stressed, we're doing a GI map because their microbiome's probably really imbalanced.
Yeah.
Which means they're not going to burn fat like they want to. They're not absorbing their nutrients. If they're not absorbing their nutrients, then our muscle build doesn't work as well, and our brains don't work as well, and our organs don't work as well. I mean, like we need all of those processes to work efficiently. It's also our second brain. So our gut highly correlates to depression and anxiety.
Yes.
And so anyway, so this is also
I watched this this talk where a researcher or a scientist or a doctor, I forget which one said she was fasting. It's one of those fasting specialists. She was fasting and she had one of those glucose monitors.
Yeah.
And she got into an argument with her daughter and she had a glucose spike.
Yeah.
From the stress of that relational event.
Fight or flight, right? The body is pouring sugar into the muscle so you can run away from the bear. Right?
So you can get a glucose spike not only from food you put in your body, but a stressful event.
100%. Yeah.
Which could lead to that insulin resistance. So you're like doubling down
what it is.
on your insulin spikes, glucose spikes. So you're stressing out. Anyway, go on.
No, it's so true. So yeah, we can come back to all of that.
That
but
blew my
basically-
mind because I was like, I thought it's only when we eat sugar that we'd have glucose spikes and insulin type of.
We have glycogen reserve, so our body is prepared to help us run away from the bear or get a good workout in.
Yeah. And we have glycogenesis too, right?
Yes. So, I mean, bodies are complex in a great, beautiful way.
Yeah.
But it's not linear. And there's a lot of layers to that, which is why, hence functionality, right? Let's look at all these different layers. So this is when they might already know, but I might recommend a GI map.
Yeah.
I'll kind of finish that. So it looks at healthy bacteria, so the balance of that. Then it looks at bacteria that we don't necessarily need, but we don't want overgrown. And so then we can see if there's overgrowth.
Is this
bacteria.
Candida?
Well, no, that's in the fungus and yeast section, but it does look at that too.
Oh my God. Okay,
So-
I wanted to ask you if that's a real thing because you always got like people like figure out your Candida, and I always
real
thought
thing.
that's a scam.
It's a real thing.
But it's a real thing. Okay.
It's a real thing. And low levels of Candida aren't bad, but overgrown, they're sugar eaters. And stress can feed it, and because of the sugar, and then sugar can feed it, and it creates bloating and muscle pain and joint pain and fogginess of the
It's
brain.
inflammation.
It's inflammation.
Causes inflammation.
And
Okay.
it ruins people's goals.
Okay.
basically.
Back to what you were saying.
So it looks at overgrowth. It looks at fungus and yeast. It looks at worms. We don't get that a lot in the US, but you can. It looks at parasites, which are more common than you'd think. And then it looks at health markers. So this is where we look at steatocrit and how well you're absorbing fat. It looks at your digestive enzymes and your pancreatic function. It looks at your SIG-A, your secretory IgA, so your immunoglobulins, which is your immune function from your gut's perspective. It looks at calprotectin, so the inflammation marker in your gut. It looks at beta-glucuronidase. It also looks for anti-gliadin IgA, so antibodies for gluten.
This gives you a lot of information as a health professional.
This is where I would say, let's order that. Well, that takes like a month to get back. So, but that doesn't mean we can't be making progress on someone's gut in the meantime if they are already having issues. But also, this is again kind of circling back to something we talked about earlier, but basically, sure, there's lots of just overall healthy habits that we can be working on that can be improving your gut and your brain and all of the processes
In the interim.
in the interim.
Yeah.
what helps about the GI map is there's specific things that do need specific treatment that I use herbs and supplements for.
Okay.
And so if something's really bad, I might say, okay, this is something that like antibiotics might help with that. But everything on there, like 99.9% of things on there, I can treat without them with herbs and supplements.
Yeah.
Which is usually my preference because then we're treating fire with fire because antibiotics can disrupt the microbiome so much. So anyway, so this again, kind of coming full circle, this is exactly where I'm like, okay, let's also order the GI map so we can be working on getting that back, or a Dutch test to look at hormones or whatever. So this is
a Dutch test.
Yeah,
that's another thing.
The Dutch test is like a more insightful hormone test that looks at the pathways of your testosterone and progesterone and estrogen and all of those pathways for that. So just another. So this is where we might order lab work or whatever.
Yeah.
And also then where we dig into the why, right? So
that's next, but that's all the intake stuff.
Yeah.
Which spanned age. It went from surface level stuff like age, weight, what's your family like. You went into like food log, a 24-hour food log. You went into like, what's your sleep routine? What's your sleep hygiene? Your stressors, your community. Then we had kind of like more medical stuff like your labs, your GI mapping, and this Dutch test. That was like all the kind of information that you bring into that first relationship. Yeah. Then, the next thing is the why. Starting off with the why, I got just a fun little game.
Love it.
What are you probably have seen repetition of the why. I wonder if you have like a top 3 whys. Like people come with the same why over and over again.
No, I get that.
Like, is there like a top 3 whys that you've heard over the years?
Great question.
You've been a practitioner how many years?
20 years.
So has there been some like top 3?
Yeah. I would say with more specifics, longevity, meaning not just like living old, but like longevity for people, right? So longevity for their spouse, longevity for their kids, longevity for their grandkids. Like that's number 1. Like I want
to live a long life.
I want to live a long, I would say long and healthy life, but long
healthy life.
Long healthy life. Well, but sometimes long life, but long and healthy life. Like I want to be, I would say that's definitely 1. 2 would be preventing early disease.
Yeah.
So Alzheimer's, heart disease. Those
we got a ton of lifestyle diseases in America, right?
The highest 2 of like, I want to prevent disease.
Which one? Alzheimer's and
heart disease are probably,
okay.
And diabetes, those 3.
Yeah.
Those would be 3. And then I struggle with the third. I think the third would be vitality, but with specifics for their life. So like, I want to feel good and energetic. I want to feel good in my body. So which relates to like confidence in the workplace or with a spouse or for dating but like feeling good in their skin.
Yeah.
And that sounds surface, but it's really like if you talk to someone in depth, like we go to and I'll correlate that with special events. So there might be somebody having a wedding or, but there's still this so this is like a mixture of vanity, but with like feeling really good. And I will put that together, that like vitality, like I want to like feel energetic and good. I want to feel, for some people, it's like I did when I was 20 or 15. For some people, it's like, I want what those people have and I've never felt it.
Yeah.
But like, I want to like feel good in my clothes. I want to feel good walking into work, or I like present on camera and I want to like the picture when I see it later or whatever. But that's like the third piece that like, I think can actually be really deep for people because they don't feel vitality.
Yeah.
Like they don't feel that
makes sense
deep
to me.
energy.
You know, they say the clothes make the man, and like the body is kind of the clothes of the soul.
It is.
And they're like, I just want my soul. I want my clothes of my soul to be
my birthday suit to map
to what. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And to feel powerful and confident. And like I noticed, I cycle, and recently the bicycle house is a place where I do their group cycles a lot.
Yeah.
And I've never been a cyclist.
Yeah.
I've always been, I just throw on the clothes that I have.
Oh,
And
you mean you're not wearing the spandex? Is that what you're saying?
I'm gonna get there, but I'm also doing the show, so I've been really frugal.
Okay.
So I haven't bought any kind of weird stuff, and they noticed, right? I never wear
You're not
kind of
wearing
the
the
proper
gear.
kit. They call it the kit.
Oh, okay.
And so one of the guys, Trevor, thank you, Trevor. He came by and he was like, "Hey man, I got this kit for you. I noticed you never wear this, so I'm gonna gift this to you." And I went. I've got the farmer's tan still.
Yes.
I put this stuff on.
Yeah.
And I felt like a bazillion
You're like,
bucks.
ooh,
I felt
fit the part.
good.
You fit the part.
I
You're like,
fit.
yeah,
Not only I fit the part, I just
like in
felt
your body. Yeah.
I felt
also like
strong,
highlighted.
and I was just like, oh man,
My muscles.
look at these muscles and my legs, and I was just like, I felt
That's cool.
confident, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
you move through the world in a different way when it's. I don't know how to explain it.
When the outside matches the inside,
right?
When you feel the part. I've had plenty of clients in the past say, you know, and it can go both ways, but I have to be like, I feel like happy, and I'm this like, I feel happy and energetic, and then I see myself in the mirror and I'm like, that doesn't match what's on the inside. Or vice versa, I might have somebody be like, I actually would exude that if I felt like my outside, like whatever. But I love that piece. That's really funny.
So
I love
good.
that piece. And also I feel like there's, I don't know that, this is another tangent, but I feel like there's like a credibility behind like, oh, like I'm a cyclist because I got the
this
kit.
outfit. I got the kit. I got the kit on.
I got the kit.
And I imagine that's the closest I'll ever get to feeling what a woman feels like when she wears yoga pants.
Oh, I was literally just thinking that when you were talking.
I'm freaking.
Because I'm like, it's like highlighted.
Look at my body. Yeah. I'm like, I'm fit. I don't know.
And it moves through the air while you're like,
you're just like,
you're faster, feel faster, whatever.
like a fish going through water real fast.
Like speedo through the,
yeah.
It's great.
So the why tends to be those three. One was, the last one was vitality, the inside mapping to the outside and feeling confident and strong. The second one was, the first one was longevity, right?
Yeah.
To live a healthy life for as long as we're living.
Sometimes that correlates very specifically for things, right? Like I want to play with my grandkids, or I want to be a cyclist when I'm 75 or whatever. And the middle one is disease prevention.
Disease prevention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which also can tie with longevity and vitality, right? But still, like they can all tie together. I think, ultimately people want to look and feel good.
We want to look and feel good. Yeah. And I think those are related.
They are. But I think when you dig into somebody's why, it's really specific for them. It's grandpa died of heart disease. It's I want to be able to like throw my daughter in the pool. It's I want to run around after my 3-year-old with energy and not be out of breath. I want to like run up the stairs. I want to stand on stage. So it's those, maybe it often falls into those 3 topics, but it's real specific. I want a promotion at work, but I don't think I'll get it unless I fit the part. Which, sometimes it is a face of a company that,
whether we like it or not, beauty plays a role in how we move through society. It does.
It also plays a role often in business in credibility.
Really?
For a lot of people, that is what I've been told, right? Well, and for me, actually, it would play a role in credibility, right? Yeah. So, like, if I'm out telling somebody to eat healthy and exercise,
and like, hold on, I got to take a smoke break.
I'm gonna take a smoke break, and I'm 200 pounds,
like, or cheeseburgers and stuff.
That's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard. And it wouldn't, then practice what you preach, sort of thing, too.
I've got this belief that I don't know how we would enact this. But I think all people that work in physical health spaces should model physical health.
Sure.
And I've noticed that when you go to hospitals, not everybody fits that bill. And I don't even know how to, they'll be taking smoke breaks out back, or they'll be obviously kind of overweight. And I don't want to blame, judge anybody, but I also want these areas of our society to be leading the way for folks.
So this is a perfect example of functional health versus clinical health, because obviously not all encompassing always, right? It's not that black and white, because sometimes you will have those doctors who are fitting the part, right? But this is where you have a cardiac doctor who, he's treating that. Maybe he's good in cardiac on one level, but he had maybe no training in nutrition. And so he's like, he has a niche of this one little thing.
It's myopic.
Or that's his service, but like maybe he doesn't have a belief in the full lifestyle. So this is where like functional health is. We are going to look at all of the different pieces, not just taking a statin, or not just taking insulin, which is, I think, a lot of times what we get from the clinical side of things is let's treat that one disease, not the whole encompassing body.
So wrong-minded. I think most of what happens to us is lifestyle related.
Yeah.
It's like all of the challenges we experience as a human is because of our ritualized behavior. And those are what we put in our body, how we move our body, and like how we're sleeping at night.
Yeah.
And right, the relationship we have to stress and to humans, which is probably the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or can be. Yeah, for sure.
So not having that be a part of every interaction with regard to health seems just like a glaring like gap.
Yeah, which is part of why I do what I do.
Yeah.
It's like I want it more accessible for people. And people talk about, doing what you love. I love what I do.
Yeah.
I love what I do because I genuinely want people to have access to it. And I honestly, we talked about the cost of the GI map and stuff like that. It's expensive. And I hate that sometimes good information for functional health is expensive.
Yeah.
But even like functional medicine doctors are more expensive and all of that. And, whatever, that is a tough thing about our culture and society for sure. But that's part of, I'm like, I'd love for that to be more. And I think it's growing. I do.
I think it's growing with nutritional psychiatry.
Yeah.
There's Georgia Edie. She's a nutritional psychiatrist where she really is bringing in how what you eat impacts your mood, your emotions, your,
You are what you eat.
You are what you eat.
Yeah.
This is a great segue into your why. We talked about the other folks' why, but can you talk a little bit more about your why?
Why I do what I do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, is this a good time to like talk through my story? Because that's
We're going to do a live story at the end.
Okay, so don't do that.
You're going to wait and talk about it at the end?
Ooh, I just feel like it's so connected with that. I think it'd be hard. I think it'd be hard to tell the story. I mean, to answer that question without telling the story.
Yeah, your life story. Y'all wait to the end.
Coming.
We'll explore Ashley's why during the life story. Okay. So how do you approach strategies with folks? How do you approach
so that's where that's almost hard to say out loud because it's so highly individual for people.
Mm-hmm.
But it starts with, I was going to totally monkey that up for you. You got it. It starts with framework. So meaning, let's just hypothetically say I have all the information, right? So let's just jump forward a month or so. And
You've done intake. Yeah.
You've done all the intake. We've got the lab work. We got the GMAP or whatever.
You've got all that stuff.
Or let's say they didn't do lab work and GMAP. It doesn't matter. I start with framework, meaning, let's just say they're doing everything, meaning, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes people don't want the exercise or don't want this piece or whatever. But let's just say they're like, I'm here for it. Let's all encompassing. So we start with framework, meaning, again, this isn't cookie cutter. So I'm not going to give everybody the same thing.
Right.
But we're going to talk through injuries in their body. So we'll talk about exercise. I'll give them framework for exercise. I will create exercise prescription for them. Mm-hmm. So meaning we're going to talk about resistance training. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about, I'm trying to think of a word that I use, mobility, essentially. So typically that anything from yoga to foam rolling to stretch labs or whatever, whatever. But we talk about resistance training. We talk about mobility. I talk about steps because I think and meeting somebody where they are, right? So let's just say they have a desk job that they can't get away from. Let's say they work in a company that refuses to give them a standing desk, whatever the case may be. We'll talk about steps and increasing anyone's NEAT. non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So what is their day-to-day movement?
Yeah.
Right. So we'll talk about framework for steps of a reasonable SMART goal, right? So like,
Yeah.
what does that look like for where they are? And then I'll talk about cardio, and that doesn't have to be like I'm getting on the treadmill or elliptical for 30 minutes, but like just generally. So like exercise, I will create a plan for them based on their injuries and body and goals, right? So I'll create, that includes all those things, right? So I create an exercise prescription and how often and how much and all of that. So we give them that. Then I'll give them nutrition. So typically nutrition, again, like a lot of options here, but I will often, again, some people not, but often give them calories and macros. So we talk about like how much of their carbs, fats, and proteins. I will give them calories based on their goals, whether they're, trying to gain muscle or lose fat or both or whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
So whether we're going into a deficit or not, and when and how often, and that'll also, that kind of goes as we go. But I'll give them an initial framework. I'll create a meal plan for somebody, and this will be kind of twofold. So one, it's really a meal plan template. So I am not giving them exactly what to eat every day all the time. That's not sustainable. But I will give them some examples of what would fit what I just told them to do.
Like proper ratios of fat, protein, and
like
carbs?
an actual, well, sure. I'm going to give them that too. I'll give them ratios. I will give them grams, but then I will create an actual meal plan of
like
food.
a food that they can
fits
make.
That.
Okay.
And it fits with fiber and all the macros and the calories I give them. I typically do 4 days. So I typically will do 4 days that are completely different, to give them ideas. This is not like, I don't want you to live and breathe by these 4 days and only eat those foods all the time, but I will give them a good balance of 4 different breakfast options, 4 different lunch options, 4 different snack options, 4 different options, and recipes, right? So I give them like
whole thing,
whole cat and caboodle for that. And even talk about timing and when they eat, whether they're intermittent fasting or whether they're not, and how often I want them to eat, which again might correlate, and even foods to eat and not to eat. So this might be, which is not always the case, but based on lab work, based on GI mapping, there may be a treatment plan.
elimination diet type of thing.
No, not exactly. More so, I mean, I might take someone through that, but that's a whole nother cat and caboodle.
Yeah.
More so, depending on what they have going on, cholesterol or blood sugar wise, I might say, okay, we need less of these foods and more of these foods, right?
Because the question I'm getting at is that there is like, how do you figure out which of the foods that people have are causing inflammation?
So great question. So I'll answer that while finishing the thought.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, which is great, but it correlates. So basically, if someone has high cholesterol or has diabetes, well, okay, they have diabetes. So we need to reduce our sugar and what that looks like. So, I will make it simple. I was going to say dumb it down, but make it simple. Like I will give them lists of foods that we should have less of or none of or whatever. And then also with a GI map, depending on what they have going on, I may need them, like candida. I may want them to stay away from sugars is also one because it feeds candida. So like there might be really specific things. I might need them a specific amount of fiber. I might need them to stay away, if they have H. pylori, I might need to stay away from high nickel foods and things that will aggravate certain overgrowths. So I will tailor and give them real specific foods.
High nickel foods?
like
what is a high nickel food?
Cocoa and chocolate.
These are things that have nickel in them?
Yes.
I just think about that nickel like a 5-cent piece, but nickel's
yes.
It's an element. It's a mineral.
Yeah.
And it's in cocoa.
It's in cocoa. It's in soybeans.
Okay. Goodness, y'all research it. Nickel's a thing. It comes in your food.
And then some people need a low nickel diet for specific like histamine reasons and whatever. But a lot of that, if it's related to the GI map and microbiome, a lot of that's temporary. It's a part of a treatment plan. So I might give them a real specific plan of certain foods and supplements and how long and when and whatever.
Yeah.
So I'll give them nutrition. I'm going to come back to your other question in a second.
About inflammation. Yeah.
I'll come back to that. So I'll give them a nutrition plan. I'll give them an exercise plan. We then talk about stress. And what they're doing every day, what they're doing, or if they're doing anything to help process stress.
Coping strategies.
So,
That's
yeah.
this.
And if they have any, and if they're doing them, I would say more often than not. Every now and then I'll have somebody who's like, "Ooh, I'm a daily meditator." And I'm like, "Ooh, I love you." But for the most part, people are like, "Well, yeah, I go on walks or something." I'm like, "Okay, we need more depth to that." And it's not about removing the stress. I mean, sure, if you can remove the stress, please do.
That's just easy.
Obviously.
Remove the stress. Okay, done.
Just quit being stressed.
Done.
But more about how we're processing stress.
Yeah.
And so I spend a decent bit of time on that. Let's talk about like what you're doing for that and helping. How can we get the stress to move through the body? It's like building a muscle. So maybe they want to take up meditation. Well, that's not going to be an overnight thing. It's a process to build that up. Maybe they want to start doing grounding. Again, not an overnight thing. Maybe they want to do journaling or therapy or whatever. Anyway, so all these things that are stress relieving, but how can we create a system to that? So that then the stress piece of it, and then I'll talk about like water and sleep too. So I'll create a plan for them, and then I say, all right, try it. I'm going to try it.
Yeah, F around and find out.
Try it for 1 week or 2 weeks, depending on how often we're meeting. Go try it. And they have full access of me. 24/7. They have full access of me.
They'll text you.
And and most people are really reasonable about, usually have somebody.
They need to be reasonable.
Long,
right.
But I tell them, you have free reign of me as you're trying this out, but also I don't want you to be perfect.
Yeah.
I want you to get your feet wet. And so then they come back and they're like, all right, well, this didn't work. Well, this was hard. Well, stress eating. Well, this, I have no idea how to do these macros. Well, cool. Then we know where to focus.
Right.
And also, we're also not going to try all of those things. Let's start here. And again, depending on like what is most prevalent for them, right? They're like, all right, I did a pretty good job with this, but I can't meal prep for life me. All right, well, let's talk about your day to day. Let me strategize with you about how to do that. And then I'll give them tools. I might send them things on meal prepping and send them and talk about that, or talk about like, ooh, okay, so on the days that your daughter has soccer, could you do it like this or whatever?
Yeah.
So I give them ways that might feel overwhelming, but I'm like, I can give you some tools to try. And maybe we just work on that. Or maybe they're killing it on food and exercise, but they're drinking 20 ounces of water a day. All right, cool. Let's talk about strategies for that. Let's try this sort of bottle. Let's like set reminders. Can you put your water cup next to the coffee maker so that you have to drink a glass of water every time you have a cup of coffee or whatever. So like, can we habit couple things? So really people tell their own story of what they need. I'll give them some framework to just like go play and try.
Yeah.
And then come back and then we know what you need to work on. I mean, they may already know, but then we know exactly by trial and error how to strategize around the things.
Right. It's partially education, right?
Yeah.
You're teaching them things.
Yeah.
And then when they learn things, they kind of change. And it's part of it is like, hey, I want you to do science.
Yeah.
I want you to try something and then tell me the results. And then we'll hone it in.
We'll figure out what went wrong.
Figure it out together.
Like, what goes wrong for you might be completely different from what goes on with somebody else.
We're infinite. Like they say no two snowflakes are the same.
Right.
Like I imagine we're at least as complex as a snowflake.
Probably
so
more.
None of us are the same.
Right. Yeah.
So with each one, you're working to figure out what's going to be optimal.
Yeah. And also figure out, I mean, and there's so many layers to that. And so that's what, I don't know why I kind of hate the idea of an onion layer thing, but it is a little bit peeling that back.
Yeah.
So initially I'm having trouble hitting my calories and macros, or maybe I'm having trouble hitting protein. Well, then maybe some of that is because I'm really stressed because I'm going through a divorce and I can't actually put focus on that because there's all of this. Well, then maybe we actually need to shift our focus to self-care and stress relief so that you have the bandwidth to prep your food, right? And so there are like so many layers to that.
Draw a therapist in. Let's get you a therapist. Let's get someone that's helping your mental health side.
Absolutely. And some of it, like I'm layered in for, right? So like I do some layer of counseling with what we're doing. But depending on the depths, it might be like, all right, like this would be a good thing for you to get added support with, whatever. And so, but I'll come back around to answer your question on like
inflammation and food. Yeah.
So on one hand, I think we know for a fact that like processed foods and, trans fats and whatever, we know some things that create inflammation in general. So,
what's in trans fats? Where do you get those? That's that fat from meat?
No, trans fats are like the ones that are like the processed fats. So the ones that are
in chips.
That are not necessarily.
It's processed food fats. Okay.
So, part of it, or, or processed foods, or,
This is the
like
Michael
highly processed
Pollan
foods.
thing, right? This is Michael Pollan.
Well, and just,
Eat food that you can pronounce.
right.
Eat whole
It
fruits and
is.
vegetables.
Love him for that and fully believe in that. So that's another thing that early on we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Meaning, I tell him, like, I want your foods to be as whole foods as possible.
Right.
So this is part of their setup. I want you, in theory, as much as you can. And this again may not be an overnight thing, but as many things as you can. I don't want it out of a bag. I don't want it out of a drive-through.
Yep.
I don't want even like processed sausage and stuff like that. Can it be something that came straight from an animal, a plant, a ground, a tree, a bean, whatever? Like, can you pronounce it? Can
That's
you
the
name
first
it?
step, is
And
like
where does it come?
whole foods.
As basic
vegetables.
as possible.
Yeah.
Have your way with your spices. Like, we can make it fun food. We can make it taste good. And that might be, not for everybody, but that might be an educational piece. Okay, let's talk about how we can make broccoli taste good, or whatever the case may be.
Heck yeah.
For you. Because some people maybe not like it, but maybe you don't know how to cook it.
Yeah. Have you tried spices and herbs? Yeah.
And so like basic foods, right? So like whole foods. So like trying to stay away from as much of the like processed bit as you can, right?
Right.
So that we already know. Creates
That's a first
inflammation,
layer of
layer of inflammation. Then, but outside of that, again, going back to blood work. So there might be things like if somebody has high cholesterol, like I might have them eating more egg whites than whole eggs, and less.
You're reducing fat.
So I'm reducing cholesterol specifically.
But that doesn't come from fat.
Well, so yes and no, but like there is cholesterol, like specifically there is cholesterol. So you have LDL cholesterol, you have HDL, you have different types of cholesterol, but like the cholesterol itself.
What is this, an ingredient? It comes in the food? What do you mean cholesterol?
This is chemistry.
This is chemistry.
This is chemistry.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm trying to figure out how to explain that.
You might not be able to, and that's fine. You might be able to take this.
Should be able to explain
this like amoeba all the way to.
I should be able to better explain that for you, but this is chemistry. This is the breakdown of foods. So like there is more like actual cholesterol, like say in shrimp, and you get more. There are also things that raise cholesterol. So this is like creating
some foods give you more cholesterol in your system than others.
Yes. So off record, there is like a better way to explain like actual cholesterol. But I will say in your blood. So this is like how like build up and all of that in your arteries, and how much it is attaching to your arterial walls, right? So there are certain types of cholesterol, like your LDL cholesterol is the cholesterol that builds up.
That's sticky.
Or triglycerides.
Okay.
Are like, this is heart disease risk, right? Oof. So this is, like the building up of arteries and stuff like that. But then you also have HDL cholesterols, which helps them not attach to the wall.
We want that one.
Right. And so you raise HDL cholesterols in the blood, in your body, by doing, healthy habits, by exercising and eating lean proteins and drinking plenty of water and having limited stress and all of those things. Conversely, not only does our food affect our cholesterol, but also, like I said,
stress levels.
Stress does, and water does, and sleep does. And so how well your body is processing those things. And also but also actual food. So you're like, processed food makes a big difference in like your blood work and your, LDLs, cholesterol, or whatever. But there's also so there is what your body looks like from blood work, as into your cholesterol levels in your body. But there's also cholesterol in certain foods like shrimp, right? So there's things like processed foods are going to raise your cholesterol. But shrimp specifically has high cholesterol. So I know that's there's kind of two layers of that. But coming full circle to the
inflammation
foods. So it might be specifically to,
because some people have inflammation with dairy, or some people have inflammation with gluten, and some people have inflammation with nuts, or some people have inflammation with beans, right?
So this is where the GI map is great. So this is also where I used to do things differently and I have learned a better way.
Yeah.
So I used to do food sensitivities like off the bat. Well, people who have an imbalanced microbiome, their good bacteria is imbalanced, are much more likely to react to all sorts of foods. So they are more likely not going to tolerate dairy and gluten. Whereas maybe actually if they we heal their gut and rebalance their gut, they can.
Really?
So this is where now I actually prefer not to do food sensitivities. I prefer to do a GI map, because if we can rebalance your microbiome, more often than not, we can incorporate most foods. That said, I also think that there are foods that are more inflammatory. So, dairy is one, it's a highly debated topic, but that is more inflammatory. I am of a personal belief, don't hate me for this, that that dairy doesn't provide a lot that you can't get better elsewhere.
Oh, okay.
So it is a saturated fat. And so this is part of like cholesterol and arteries and all of them. And visceral fat, of course, again, all these are complex.
Well, I'm going to ask you about visceral fat. I've been trying to work on that myself.
Well,
that's one of my whys.
Yeah. So there's layers to how that happens and what relates to that, right? Like, 'cause you might have one person who can eat pizza all day long and not gain an ounce of anything, right? And then you have other people that doesn't. So like, obviously our bodies are complex, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
There's a lot going on,
Yeah.
metabolism and how they're storing things and all of that. But anyway, all of that said, I think the food specific, I like the GI map first, because if I can balance their GI more often than not, that's great.
Because they'll tolerate other things that they wouldn't tolerate.
Yeah,
before.
so they might. A lot of people tell me they can't tolerate like cruciferous foods, so the broccoli and their cauliflower. Oh, it just bloats me. Well,
yeah.
One is you actually might need more fiber, and so maybe you have a really low fiber diet, and then you're eating these really fibrous foods, and your gut's like, "What is this? I don't know how to process this," because you're not doing it regularly. We actually need a lot of fiber to feed the healthy bacteria in our gut. It feeds on healthy fiber. That's like food for it, which gives us this protective layer in our gut, which helps protect against bad bacteria.
Doesn't it also
and
slow
pathogens.
down absorption of like the glucose and stuff?
Yes, absolutely. So fiber and protein both help slow down the absorption of sugar, of glucose.
Reduces.
So
the
if you're
spike.
gonna eat, if you're gonna have pasta or even a banana, coupling that with protein or fiber helps slow down the absorption of it.
Yeah.
So then it's not dumping into your blood. You then your body can utilize it as you're going through the day, and
Right.
and then you're not getting overload to store, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going on so many tangents here, but like some of it is like so like I said,
Overload to store means that your body started to put that into fat, right?
Yeah.
Overload.
Well,
There's too much sugar, so I'm going to store it with fat because
use it all right.
you don't need all these energy right now, so we're going to store it for later.
We're going to store it for later.
And that's fat creation.
Yes. Yeah. And so anyway, so part of it is if we can balance somebody's gut, well, then if they're still having issues with a beautiful microbiome, then I might look at food sensitivities. I will say, but yes, food sensitivities can create inflammation. A lot of times, if somebody has a super imbalanced gut, let's just say they have gas and bloating and they're not tolerating their broccoli and they want to and all these things, more often than not, their microbiome's imbalanced, which also means often there are some key foods that people tend to react to. Gluten and dairy are two of them.
Yeah.
That when their microbiome's imbalanced, then their body, those are some of the first two that their body's like, well, I can't tolerate this. I'm like trying to figure out how to absorb nutrients over here. Like I can't do that right now. And sometimes people just feel so good off of it that they're like, even though my gut's balanced now, like I don't need it.
Yeah.
I will say I think gluten in the US is trash. So, I mean, compared like gluten in Europe, it just doesn't have the same effect, but that might be more of a food processing whole systematic thing.
Yeah.
But yeah. So there are some great blood tests you can do for food sensitivities, but that's not my go-to. And I would say rarely do we need it. If we can clean up a diet and eat whole foods and we can balance the microbiome and we're getting exercise and water and sleep,
Most of those
issues resolve themselves.
Does the whole fruits and vegetables, does that resolve a lot of the gut microbiome issues?
So a lot of that is fiber. So yes.
Fiber?
So then we're like feeding the healthy bacteria.
Is that like psyllium husk type of stuff?
Well, psyllium husk is, yes, psyllium husk is a fiber and you can get that by itself, but also you get fiber from fibrous foods,
like
right?
all
So
your
like
vegetables.
chia seeds and fruits and vegetables and also whole grains and stuff like that. So like you get fiber from a lot of those places and it's food for that healthy bacteria.
Okay.
So one is we're feeding the gut the healthy bacteria,
Right.
or feeding the healthy bacteria rather. We're feeding the mucin, and we don't need to go into that, but basically we're helping create a barrier in our gut so that it can keep out the other bacteria we don't need, pathogens and parasites and fungus and worms and viruses and stuff like that. And so then our immunity's up, for one. Whole foods is one of the things that's already helping our gut. But also sometimes we're doing that. Well, now we're having better absorption of vitamins and minerals, and now we're moving our body more, which is helping those processes and helping our brain and helping burn fat and
it's multi-pronged.
getting endorphins going, and we're getting water to feed the processes in our body, and we're getting sleep for restoring our muscles and our organs getting rest and all of this. And so then a lot of the gut stuff, and then also focusing on stress.
Yes.
So we're also focusing. And so that's why we're working on like 10 different things, not necessarily, maybe minutely all at once, but I usually hyper focus on like for whoever the client is, their beasts, right?
Yeah.
Like their biggest challenges. But again, this is bricklaying, right? So then as we're working on all these 5 to 10 things, we're feeling better. We're processing food better. Our bowel movements are regular because we're getting more fiber and more water and more sleep. And our stress is better because we have these outlets for processing stress. So our body's processing food better.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that, we don't need this. So that's another, like, I would say red flag if somebody's like, all right, well, I can't eat this and I can't eat this. And I can't eat this. I'm like, then we need to balance your microbiome. Yeah. Yeah. And stress, right? With all that.
That is cool. I had a question. Let's see. It's about. Okay, so I'll just go back to where we were. That's your strategies piece. That's how you're strategizing with folks.
Yeah.
In order to get them, and it's like, it's coming at it from a lot of different angles, and I imagine there's synergy there, right?
Absolutely.
Like the stress really impacts the absorption of the nutrients and the reduction in the
and their
glucose
ability to create a schedule to make food and exercise.
And feeling good. Yeah. You know, they get all these things kind of working together to improve how they feel in their body.
And having a partner to do it alongside them to some degree, because like I said, a lot of times it's not just what to do or even how to do it, but having somebody like talk you, oh God, a terrible weekend and I ate all this stuff. Like, great, let's like refocus. You're doing fine. You're doing great. Like sometimes it's just like, whatever. Maybe you're hard on yourself. Like, you know, like maybe you need to go to the wedding and have a good time to let off some stress.
Self-compassion. And it's probably 80-20, right? We need to have those moments where we can let our hair down or just like.
Absolutely. Because if somebody's going in 100%, that's also not sustainable.
They're going to burn out.
So that's why I also tell people, I'm like, I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking at 85%.
There's no such thing as perfection.
Yeah, there isn't.
Right? We're looking for, yes.
And we also, like I said before, like, there will be those moments of celebration and joy with food. That doesn't mean you can't ever have the chocolate cake or the glass of whiskey.
Right.
It means, where does it fit? How does it fit? And are we doing it mindfully?
Right. Yeah. We're not doing it as a coping strategy.
Yeah.
We're doing it purely for that celebration. All right. Let's do the part where we kind of go through my why and kind of like where I'm at on all this stuff. And then I can ask you some questions about the things that I'm doing in my life.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to walk me through that, or should I go through what we've already talked about and you walk me through it?
Yeah. So
I'm 47.
Okay. 47 years old. How tall are you?
6 foot. I'm actually 5'11.56.
Oh,
but I've rounded up to 6 foot because I think people are more impressed by 6 foot.
They are. Yeah.
Anything under 6 foot, they're like, you're a short king.
I don't know about that, but it definitely carries a weight with it.
I'm 6 foot.
And I think you can totally round up. You're good.
Yeah. Yeah, 6 foot.
6 foot. How much do you weigh, if you don't mind me asking?
So it's changed a lot because I'm doing keto, but right now I weighed myself a couple days ago, and I'm doing intermittent fasting too. We'll get into all that.
Yeah.
It's like 179.
Okay. And just give me short or long version, doesn't matter to me. Give me some idea. You said it's changed a lot. So like,
It
what
has.
was it 3 months ago or
I
6
got a
months ago?
DEXA scan at the beginning of February, and it was 196.
Okay, that's a big difference.
When I started my fitness journey, it was 206.
Okay, that's a big
And
difference.
then I'd done a bunch of exercise and it wasn't moving, which
Yeah.
is why I started, I'm going to start looking at nutrition with like with a microscope. I'm going to try to figure out what's going on there.
Yeah.
Because I've heard a lot of people say like the body's built in the kitchen.
Yeah. Well, this is why I would love to see your lab work, but
Well, we'll talk about that. Maybe I'll do it. I'll have to figure out how to fund it.
But I wish we could have done it before and after lab work, because that would be.
But this is a relation we can do. Oh yeah, that would have been cool.
I mean, when's the last time you had lab work done?
Oh, it's been a while.
20 years? No.
No, not 20 years.
Okay.
It wasn't too. It was
but
probably.
Do you think you had lab work done when you were around 200?
Yeah.
Okay. So you
I
could
can
take
show you that. I can show you that. Yeah. I remember getting it.
Maybe another time we could do that, and you could get new ones, and we could compare the two.
How much is lab work if I was going to get lab work? Because I don't have insurance anymore. This is my job now.
Yeah.
So money's kind of a thing. Do you have places where folks can go?
Yeah, absolutely. I can order lab work for you, and you can, if it's not with insurance, pay out of pocket. I would say it depends on what all we order, but I would say, anywhere from like $50 to $150.
Really?
But,
okay.
Okay. Give or take, depending on what we order. But yeah.
I will faint. The last time I fainted, they took so much blood.
I'll go with you.
I remember I woke up. I woke up in the chair. I had a whole life. I had a whole dream where I was a whole nother thing. I woke up and there was strange. I didn't know where I was. There were strange people around me.
Yeah.
They were handing me a pack of.
Was it because
peanut
of the blood
butter
loss,
crackers?
Or were you nervous about it, or both?
I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, it also might depend on how long you've eaten, what you ate last, all those things.
Well, I was fasted, right?
Right, but fasted, right? Are we fasted 12 hours, 18 hours, 24 hours? It makes a difference.
It wasn't 24, but yeah. Anyway, the cure for it was peanut butter.
Peanut butter
crackers, and laying down for a second. I was like, I'm 100% now. I'm out of here. Okay, so that's So yeah, I could get that blood work.
Fascinating.
But 179 now, about 179.6, 180, something around there.
Okay. How would you say your day-to-day life? Are you sedentary? I'll give you examples. Are you standing most of the day, maybe like a teacher would, or are you like walking nonstop like a mailman would be?
I am extremely, I'll tell you, I probably do, on Monday, I do 3.5 hours of exercise.
So this isn't the exercise aside. So this is lifestyle outside of exercise.
Outside of exercise?
Yeah, outside of exercise.
I do move. I walk peppermint. But when I'm editing, when I'm not doing these interviews, I'm sitting down on a computer editing them.
Okay, so
but I do try to I have a stand desk, so I can sit and stand.
Mix. I would guess more maybe like a teacher of you're standing a decent bit through the day, but you might be sitting.
Yeah, that's true. So that's true.
A good mix. Okay.
I do try to walk peppermint and incorporate steps into my life. Yeah. Bike to the gym instead of drive when I can.
So that's where one of the things I would say is, trying to figure out what your average steps are for a week, right?
Okay.
And looking at what that looks like, it tells a story about how much you're moving, right? So even a teacher, they might be standing all day, but their step count might not be crazy high. Mm-hmm. I mean, they might be shifting back and forth, but maybe not crazy high, versus a mailman is clocking, who knows what,
mad steps, yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that gives a picture. So exercise. Tell me what that looks like on a weekly basis. How many days and minutes, and what does that look like?
Yeah. So I do about 3.5 hours on Monday, because I do 2 kind of foundational classes where we'll focus on one movement.
Of what?
2 hours of that.
Weight training of what?
We'll focus on one movement. So it could be pistol squats, or it could be pull-ups, or it could be squats.
Weight training though. Yeah, resistance training.
And then I'll do a strength and conditioning class in the evening, 5:30, and then I'll do abs and glutes. So it's 3.5 hours total of that. On Tuesdays, I do 2 hours of yoga, and I do an hour and a half of strength and conditioning and abs and glutes.
Okay.
And then on Wednesday, I do normally an hour of yoga, and then 2.5 hours of strength and conditioning. One's a dynamic circuit, so it's more of a hit, and then the other one's more of a lifting type of stuff. And then on Thursday, I do an hour. No, Thursdays I do 3 hours of yoga. I do 3 different yoga classes on Thursday, and I do 1.5 hours strength and conditioning and abs and glutes. And then Friday is kind of my like chill day.
Yeah.
I'll do handstand class, which is like
that.
tons of fun. I think it's something totally different, and I love it. And I'll do handstand class, and I'll do bouldering.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then on Saturday, I'll either do a dynamic circuit or like a 34-mile bike ride or both. And then play the rest of the day by ear. Sundays, if I have my kids, I'm probably going to run with my daughter, whether it's like 5 miles or 10 miles, but it's going to be probably a longer run with my daughter. I'll put some cycling in there, and I'll put some like dog walking. I'll do like I've been calling it like my 100 push-up walk.
Okay.
I take Peppermint on a walk. It's 2.5 miles, and I do 100 push-ups during that walk. So I have a bunch of little things that I do. I used to do those every day, but I haven't been as consistent with the 100 push-up walk.
I hope I can say this, but I feel like most people would be like, bro, I don't have that kind of time. I'm jealous.
Well, the things I do now are the show and
no, I know, but I'm
my
just
fitness.
saying, like, I'm just saying that exactly. No, I think it's great. I think it's amazing and exciting. But I would say for most people,
they don't have the time for all that.
They don't have the time for that.
Yeah, I used to have 50-50 kiddos, and it recently changed to where they're with their mom more. Yeah. And I think part of this was a salve for my sadness.
Yeah.
Because changing the amount of time and frequency I had with my daughters brought a lot of depression. And so this has been my prescription to like, feel better and like to really invest in myself and use this time wisely.
Yeah. It's interesting because on one hand, I think, and I hate to like say a widespread gender thing, but I would say, if I had a woman who was your age who came to me and saying she was doing all those things, I think that her body would not respond as well. To that. I think male bodies respond better to that load of movement.
I feel like one of those dogs you got to run out at the end of the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But that said, I will say that is one thing that I would also probably put as something to pay attention to your body. How long have you been doing that system? Yeah.
It's probably going on a year.
Okay. Yeah. So that's one thing that I would say worth paying. I think it's beautiful. And obviously, and if you do it as a lifestyle and you're moving, and a lot of that is also like not super intense. Like yoga is a full like flow move. I mean,
some of it is stretch and breathe. Some of it's hatha or
But overtraining is a thing.
That's what I wanted to ask you about, overtraining with regard to my particular thing.
And so that I would say is I'll say as a pink flag, a red flag.
What is the indicators of it? How would I know somatically? How would I know?
Not recovering as well.
That's feeling sore for a long time.
Yeah, feeling sore, your joints hurting, not recovering as well. I mean, anything. You could also not digest as well. For women, again, depending on age, there could be a change in menstrual cycle. Headaches and not sleeping as well, and a lot of biofeedback. Right? How are you sleeping? How are you digesting? How do you feel? How's your energy? So a drop in energy, a drop in recovery, and how well your muscles are recovering. A lot of those kind of things, biofeedback.
So pink flag.
I said pink flag, mostly because I want to be kind. I would say, like, it's worth paying attention to.
I will. No, I think that's good. That's good insight.
I think also, if the majority of it, and it sounds like you had a mix, but if the majority of it is like yoga and cardio and handstands and stuff like that, and it's a lifestyle and there's joy,
there's community,
and there's
definitely community
and all of that, then I think your body adapts to like moving. This is another tangent, but if you go down the road of blue zones, most of those people have, now it might not be classes, right? But they are, farming all day or doing, like, they're moving their body all day long. So I don't have a problem, but in any stretch, moving your body all day long, but overloading with your muscles potentially can lead to that, right? So like, the more on the strength training side and even the cardio side, I think there's layers of that. It's also individual to your body and how you're fueling it and making, getting enough calories to support that for brain health and all of those things too.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So then sleep. When do you usually go to sleep?
I try to have pretty good sleep hygiene about 10:30.
Okay. And when do you
Time
usually
around
wake up?
10:30 to 11. I try to wake up around 7.
Okay. What's your quality of sleep?
I get up to pee sometimes multiple times a night.
Okay. Okay. So that's one thing that I would say. Even though, yes, that tends to happen for most everybody more as we age,
Right.
that is something that we could improve.
Really?
I truly believe that. And that's anything from, I mean, that's even looking at like prostate health to when you drink your water. And
Like you wouldn't drink water a couple hours before bed or something?
yeah, I like to bulk it. I think it's great for waking up and digestion in the morning. So like front loading your water and tapering off and then trying to, like stop it a couple hours before bed.
Okay.
I think it can be really helpful. Deep quality sleep is so restorative and great.
I know.
And so, that's one thing, from infants or young kids can be disruptive to stress can be disruptive. So that's another layer of that. But it also tells a lot, like hormone health can be disruptive. So there's layers to that. So that's something you say you wake up to pee, but if your body is in a deep enough sleep, unless you've overloaded water at the end, your body should be able to sleep all night without getting up to pee. Usually your bladder doesn't wake you up. Usually something else wakes you up, like a crash in blood sugar or hormones or something like that. And then,
like, I also
and then you wake up and you're like, well, yeah, my bladder's full. I have to pee.
Yeah.
And so, so that's something that we would potentially dive into a little bit to see, could we, is it simple in terms of, can we front load the water? And
I think I'll try that just at the onset.
And see.
When would you stop drinking water?
2 hours before bed, if you can.
So by 8:30. Yeah, 8:30.
Yeah. Assuming you also had enough. And so that goes to another question. How much water do you drink?
That's a question I wanted to ask you. How much water should I drink?
Yeah.
But I'll tell you how much water I do drink. I heard that you're supposed to drink a gallon of water a day. I try to do that. I'm probably not successful at it.
So I'll answer this in a couple of ways. There's a lot of schools of thought on this.
Okay. What's your school?
And well, that's what I say. I don't know that there's one right way. So let me just answer that. I'll just say, but I do have a school. For men, I like 2.2 liters around a gallon. I think is great. I mean, yeah. So I think that is, or I'm sorry, 2.2 for women. I think almost 3 for men. So about a gallon for most men. Now I might have like a 5'4" guy that I wouldn't necessarily need that much water. But I would say,
but a 6-foot guy like me,
I would say around a gallon, I think is great.
Okay.
I also think, and we're not going to do math right now, but I think it would be worth paying attention to, with all the exercise you're doing, how much are you sweating in that? And are you replacing enough water?
Yeah.
And so for, I would say, an average exerciser, which I would not consider you an average exerciser, I would consider you on the high end of exercising.
Right.
For an average exerciser, I would say around 3 liters, around a gallon. I don't know exactly what that conversion, but it's close.
Yeah.
It would be good for a man. And for women, I would say around 2 liters, give or take 2 to 2.2, which is like 90 to 100. I don't know exactly the conversion in ounces, but for women.
Yeah. It's probably more than you guys think.
Oh, it's more than you're drinking.
Yeah. Folks should be drinking more water.
And front loading. I mean, honestly, one of the best things for your brain. Front loading the water. One of the best things for your brain.
First thing in the morning.
And digestion is drink. Yeah. Drink a quart of water if you can.
First thing in the morning?
Yeah.
Front load it.
It doesn't have to be a quart. It depends on that. But front load it. It is a better, quote unquote, caffeine for your brain than caffeine is.
Really?
It also will be better for your digestion. It's also better for your adrenals if you don't drink coffee before your food. So let's throw that out there for everybody.
Okay. If you don't drink coffee before your food, it's better for your adrenals.
If you don't. Yes. You said that backwards. It was a negative. Yes, exactly.
What did you say?
If you eat before you drink your coffee, it's better for your adrenals.
My bad.
No, you said it right. I just had to convert the negatives.
Yeah, right.
Yes. So basically,
eat before you drink coffee.
Don't drink coffee on an empty stomach first thing in the morning, especially if you have stress. It's just not great on your adrenal health.
For my particular,
most people do drink coffee.
They probably do. Like first thing, the best part of waking up.
Bulges in your cup.
Yeah. So just for my particular chart or whatever, I don't drink caffeine. I don't drink coffee. I don't.
Yeah.
All my teas are herbal.
Yeah.
I don't do caffeine if I can help it.
No, I think that's great. I would say, it's one of those things, people ask me a lot about this. There are lots of studies behind a cup of coffee, and the health benefits of that can be good for digestion, and there's other benefits around that. But and so I kind of, again, school of thought, I don't think this is the end all be all by any stretch, but if somebody wants to be a coffee drinker, I highly encourage 1 cup and in the morning. And keep it to that. If you're doing more than that, you are probably messing with your adrenals, or you're relying on it for something that your body can probably do naturally.
It's probably a maladaptive coping strategy.
Right. And you're using it for energy that you're not allowing your body
your nutrition should be, and your lifestyle should be giving you those things.
It's
probably impacting your sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, coming back to water. Yeah, I like doing some in the morning and whatever. So
front loading, drinking about a gallon.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
What's your stress level on a scale of 1 to 10? And this is work, kids, anything, health, all of the above. 1 to 10. 10 being...
I don't think I'm 10. I think I was a 10 when I started this project. And this has all been a way to have a lifestyle that allowed me to reduce stress.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any money, which provides stress, but I have a belief that it will, which is helpful to the stress. I think I meditate. I have a lot of the yoga.
Give me the number first, and then we'll talk about stress relief.
It's hard to pick a number, but I would say probably around 5. I'm just going to go in the middle of the road. I'm not freaking out. I don't, I've found a way to navigate kids. That I can cope with them in healthy ways. Okay, like I move my body.
So what are your coping mechanisms?
It tends to be movement. It tends to be community. Like I'll call someone that I like a trusted companion. I'll call them. I'll move. I'll go for a walk. I'll, I love playing the piano. I'll get my feelings out there. How else do I got men's groups, I got men that I can reach out to. I got this is a coping strategy for me. Like I'm learning this lifelong learning. I read. I invest. I think this whole endeavor is kind of a bit of a coping strategy.
No, I get that.
What's another coping strategy?
No,
music
that's good.
Is definitely one.
Yeah, it's well rounded. I think that's great. I think it's good to have more than one thing. I will say, I think that obviously exercise and movement is great for your body in all the ways, right? It's good for your brain, it's good for your muscles, it's good for your body, it's good for your stress and all those things. But I will say, if you have high stress, utilizing exercise as your stress reliever is not, I don't want somebody to dump into
they need to soothe.
Well, no, not what I was going to say, because exercise is it raises your cortisol temporarily. Now, over time, it helps it go down, but in the moment, it raises your cortisol. So I always want people to have at least a few calming, still stress relievers. So I love playing music and meditation. I think yoga, yes, it's movement, but I think can fall into that category.
Yeah, depending on the kind.
And community, I think all of those things can do. Calling a friend, all of those things. I just often have people come in. I'm like, what are your, coping strategies? Running or something like that. Well, your body needs calming ways to release the stress, not just ones that your cortisol's high during it.
Is this where people start talking about the parasympathetic nervous system? Yes. Is that where this comes in? Okay. Yes. We need to trigger the parasympathetic nervous system.
We need to help our body get out of fight or flight and relax. And especially this day and age, like there's so much of go, stress, move, that are, again, maladaptive, right? Our bodies then adapt to functioning in this fight or flight, and it's like our bodies forget how to rest and relax, which then affects our digestion and how well we absorb nutrients and how well we communicate and our beliefs on ourselves and all the things.
I wonder if some folks are stressed out so much that they don't realize when they are stressed
100%.
out. They just live a life of stressed out.
100%. I actually lived in a space when I went through a divorce that I started having, I started getting dizzy is actually what was happening to me. So I started getting dizzy and I was like, what is going on? I was like, and I couldn't figure it out. So I started spending tens of thousands of dollars. I was like, I had a brain MRI and, I had blood work done and I was seeing acupuncturists and chiropractors. And I was like, I'm for sure I'm dying of cancer.
The whole kit and caboodle, throw it at me.
Oh, and I'm like, but believe. I'm like,
let's figure this out.
And I'm a pretty holistic person, so I was trying all those routes. But I'm also like, let me also get blood work and get an MRI. Like I want to, like I want all the things like daily, every day for like a year. I was like, what is going? Like something's wrong with my body. And well, then it moved, and I'm not an anxious person by nature.
Right.
Then it moved into where then I was like, am I having chest pains? And I'm like, something's wrong with my heart. This is why I'm getting dizzy. Like we're gonna figure this out. So I went to see a cardiologist, and he like basically laughed at me. He's like, you're perfectly healthy. Like
stressed
fine.
all the time.
Well, that's what he said. He's stressed, and I was like, but I was like, I don't feel like, I was like, I have, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I had a list. I was like, I didn't tell you all of my stressors.
Yeah.
But I felt mentally in control. I was like, I feel in control of all of these pieces. And so that doesn't make sense to me, even though, this is where I say dietitians need dietitians and doctors need doctors and trainers need trainers.
Yes, because we got blind spots.
We have blind spots. And so this is where I was like, I know that like stress can create all these things, but surely this isn't it because I feel in control of everything.
Yeah.
So I reached out. I was talking to this therapist at the time to help me deal with the transition. There's kids in the mix and all of this. And
right.
So I was talking to this therapist at the time, and I said, is it possible that I'm having these somatic symptoms from stress, even though I feel mentally and emotionally fine?
Yeah, because your body's processing things differently than your mind.
I was like, I'm exercising, I'm doing yoga, and I'm meditating, and I'm like happy. Gosh darn
I'm happy.
Like I'm meditating, it's working.
I'm doing the things.
I was like, I was like, is it possible that my body is reacting even though mentally I feel perfectly fine? And he's like,
because you could be masking.
Well, and he's like, Ashley, 100%.
1000%. Yes.
And he even said, he was like, Ashley, he's like, if I knew, and I
how many people came in and said, everything's okay. They cognitively think they've got it all under control, but every part of their body's like emitting the distress.
And I asked him, I said, he said, Ashley, I know a lot about you at this point. And he said, and you're a happy person. But he goes, but if I knew 100 women, he goes, I'm not talking about clients. If I knew 100 women who had been through what you'd been through, he's like, I would have expected anxiety or stress or meltdown well before now. And I was like, in a weird way, that makes me feel better. I don't know, like whatever. But
you're resilient.
Yeah. But then that wasn't quite everything I needed to hear yet. I was like, that was a building block for it.
Yeah.
Well, then I went and I was like, I need to like get out of my world. So then I left and took my kids to my parents and whatever. Well, then it was almost opposite of what I needed. I was like hyper focused on my body, and I was like, it's my heart. And so I went to see a family friend who was a cardiologist. So second cardiologist I'd seen, and he laughed at me, and I think I needed that. He's like, you're fine. He's like, you just need like internal peace. And so like, whatever, he didn't think he used those words. He was like, you're stressed. Like,
you're stressed.
Go take some antidepressants or something. I don't know. Like, whatever. Yeah. He's like, get out of my office. But I needed that because then it all went away. Then
strategies.
I revamped what I was doing in a more intentional and grounded way, instead of like I meditated or I did therapy and I did yoga. Then this is like the mind part. I had to believe that it was stress, honestly. That's what I really needed to believe, that it wasn't something else. But I also had to like surrender to that and be like, all right, I'm going to like give my all into like really like grounding, and everything went away. Oh, okay. But the mind is powerful. And so this is like, I was like creating all of this stuff, because then it was like the stress affected the body. Well, then I got stressed about how the body was affected, which created anxiety. And it was this vicious cycle.
Yeah.
When really I had all the tools I needed. I just needed to breathe into it.
So like do them. You needed to, some way that you were doing them.
Well, yeah, I needed intentionality behind it. And I had to surrender to it.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a difference between like, I did a guided meditation and being really present to meditating, which again, isn't easy to break into. So like it's a process.
All these things are hard, y'all.
I did
you can do it. People can do it.
Yeah. I did a meditation course like with a friend
Oh, I did the mindfulness-based stress reduction, the John Kabat-Zinn 8-week program.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
I did. Oh, what's her name? Karen something. Karen Way, Karen Anderson, Karen, I don't know anyway. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot your name, Karen. But she's actually
It was a meditation
US. She does a lot of meditation class, but she did one in person. I was living in Vail at the time.
Okay.
And my friend was like, come do this with me. It's like a, at our yoga studio. And I was like, okay. And I did this course and it was hard. It was so hard. I'm like, she's like, we worked our way up, but I want to say on like week 8 or something, we were supposed to sit there for 25 minutes in a group with our eyes closed. And not move and not scratch your nose when it itches.
Oh, that's the hardest.
And which I actually is also really powerful. You're supposed to focus on it without itching it.
Watch it rise and fall.
She's like, focus on the itch. And anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then like breath and all that. Anyway, I went through the whole thing and I was like, whew, I'm glad that was done. All right. And I really don't think that I mean, it was a great introduction for me and I did it for 8 weeks and I was or whatever. And it was a great introduction. And it wasn't until later on when I was dealing with all of that stress that I was like, I need to like deep dive into this.
Yeah.
And then I surrendered to it and it was powerful, but I had to work myself into it and get to that, do some guided meditations and be present to it and then set myself up so I could sit on the floor for 20 minutes. But then all that training was still really helpful because then I was able to pull in all the things that I had learned.
Heck yeah.
Because I wasn't ready for it the first time.
Yeah. You had all the tools. You just needed the life to give you the impetus to reconfigure how you're using them.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, we got it.
So I'm 5. I'm around to 5. I think what I'm hearing is I could potentially increase the calming and the still, not lean on the exercise as much when I'm feeling stressed
too. But I think that's great.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is also recognizing it. So like recognizing your stressors and making sure that you're being intentional.
That's that awareness. Am I stressed right now? That was kind of the question I was getting at. How do I know when I'm stressed?
I think part of it is your body.
Like rumination. Right? You're having like racing thoughts.
I think some of the other things, biofeedback, right? So like, how well are you sleeping? Are you waking up with your mind running?
Yeah.
Are you, and again, it can be several things, but like how well are you recovering? How do your muscles feel? How do your joints feel?
Feeling sore.
Whatever. A lot of those things. But then, how distracted are you throughout the day and stuff like that. But that's where, you mentioned the piano piece. Can you be intentional about like, let me use this as a release? Not just doing it, but doing it and also
surrendering into it. Like you said.
Can I do it? And same thing with yoga. You can go do a yoga class or you can go be a yoga class and like get into the spirituality release. And so I think there does need to be intention behind the stress relief or calling a friend and like really like helping some of that pass through you. Like use it like a journaling session to a friend. Let me like let some of this out of my body.
I think journaling's a big one too. I'm not doing it now, but I interviewed Father Bill Wigmore and his whole thing is 2-way prayer and he does his whole journaling routine and I did it for 30 days and it was really helpful.
Yeah.
I could always pull that back out.
Yeah.
Or morning pages, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, morning pages. I love, all those things. I do think it's really powerful to be in tension when, before your feet hit the floor, when your feet hit the floor and when you're laying down in bed. So I think just like your intention for your day and being grateful for your day and all of those things, like
gratitude practice, intentionality.
Yeah. It's really powerful. Water. We talked about water, stress, exercise. Tell me what your support system is like. I think you've mentioned some of this.
Yeah, I've got some men's group stuff. I got the people that I meet in here that I tend to keep in my community if I can, because having those relationships are important. I have a companion that I see pretty regularly, someone that I'm dating, or at least I communicate with her regularly. I have the people at the gym. So I have that like healthy, when you talked about healthy lifestyle community.
Yeah.
I like seeing them and we goof off a little bit.
So it sounds like a great all encompassing. You got some personal, some like big community and a lot of healthy around all of that.
Some romantic.
Do you have any negative health impacts, people or community wise, that are begging you to come out on a bender drinking or whatever?
No, I don't drink anymore. I don't really drink or do drugs anymore. Let me think. I don't really have any.
Or anybody who brings donuts into the house or whatever. I'm just saying.
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't have a lot of those.
That's great. Yeah.
Thankfully.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm neurodivergent, so I'm weird socially anyway. So that kind of like,
Yeah, you're like, I don't know, I might know some people, but not people who are like really
no,
impacting or you're feeling
it's not big.
pressured or
Right.
whatever. Because it can be around and not influence you
Right.
versus, somebody who's showing up in the morning with donuts or something, right?
Like, I really want those donuts. Yeah, I don't want that. I don't have anybody like that. I don't think.
Yeah. Not that donuts are the end all be all, but anyway.
Yeah. Donuts aren't the devil. If you're gonna have one, have it with some vegetables or something, some protein,
or just enjoy your donut and
or just enjoy it. It's part of the 20%.
Yeah. Okay, so nutrition. I think we
that's what we'll talk about.
Yeah.
I've been doing keto and intermittent fasting now for more than a month, probably a month and a half.
Okay. You started both of them at the same time?
Not at the exact same time. As I started doing a lot of research, and fasting, like I just saw all the benefits of both of them.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, I want these benefits. Yeah. And so it was kind of like a F around and find out thing. Yeah. And then I kind of like it. Yeah. It moved me towards all whole fruits and vegetables.
Like that.
It moved me towards, learning about autophagy and increasing my testosterone and T cell count and human growth hormones through the fasting process and resetting
your mitochondrial function and
all that stuff. So whenever I tend to fast on Mondays. Okay. So I'll do like a 36 or like 42 hour fast from Sunday night until Tuesday afternoon oftentimes. Yeah. Sometimes I'll do whatever's past the 48 because I'll do
72.
I've done that once or twice. Well, they're water fasts. Then when I'm not fasting, I'm eating a lot of like ground turkey, ground pork. I'm eating pork belly. I'm eating chicken breasts. I'm eating ground beef. Those are the kind of the protein stuff. I'm eating a lot of fats. Like I bought a 5-gallon bucket of coconut oil. So I use that like refined coconut oil. I do coconut butter for like when I want a sweet thing, and I'll mix that with chia seeds, impulse, maybe like a dark chocolate square, like 88 to 100% dark chocolate. Yeah. Eat at least 2 avocados a day. I'm getting a lot of vegetables. Like my vegetables are really onions, celery, cauliflower for cauliflower rice. I'll do broccoli. I'll do zucchini. I do pickles and sauerkraut and kimchi for kind of getting that that
fermentation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I also have a gut probiotic pills that I take twice every morning. That I got through the Buy Nothing group in my
I love it.
And these are like it's like $120 worth of pills. And I got like 3 bottles. It's like so sweet. So I've been using those. I probably won't continue to use them because they're expensive. Sure. But I'm using them now. I do whey protein. I do collagen. I do psyllium husk. I have like a 5-pound bag of psyllium husk in there. I do casein too. Yeah. I try to do the pound of protein per body weight, which is like 180, whatever. But I'm also trying to do the keto, like fat's supposed to be the 60-70% of what you intake, which is challenging when I'm trying to get that amount of body of protein. I eat probably twice a day. Yep. I do those fat bombs. I call them fat bombs. They're like coconut oil, coconut butter, hemp hulls, chia seeds, and maybe some chocolate, maybe not. I do that like probably twice a day. I do that protein drink once a day, probably I do the creatine in it too. Yeah. That's about it. Okay. It's that. And then I mix that up with different formulas. Sometimes I'll do it in a soup with like a beef bone broth and I'll put it over like the cauliflower rice. So I'll do it with like some turmeric and I'll do like curry powders or harissa, or I do a lot of like the spices to make it tasty. I'll do it over salad, like a super greens. Yeah, cool. With like
you didn't mention leafy greens. I was gonna ask if you
I do like super greens. I do cabbage, so I'll do like the cabbage tacos.
Yeah, cool.
A bunch. I do a apple cider vinegar, olive oil or avocado oil and mustard type of dressing on a lot of things. Yeah. So I can get that like apple cider vinegar because I've really heard that's really good. Yeah. That's kind of in my food word
No,
bank
I love it.
now.
I love it. So no, I think that's great. I think you cover a lot of pieces. I think that's beautiful, honestly, for the most part. It's so the thing with, well, both, I would say, intermittent fasting and keto for a lot of people. Well, first off, keto, I think I'll kind of talk about them a little
Yeah, yeah.
separately, but like, keto can be a great thing, and all the things you mentioned, right? Like the, regeneration of cells in your mitochondrial and the ketones for your brain and clarity and,
Yeah,
whatever.
emotional, like there's that mood and yeah.
Yeah. So there can be, and obviously, with insulin sensitivity and
Right.
glucose control and all of that, like fantastic. I will say for a lot of people, most people, maybe it's not sustainable long term.
I don't know that I'm doing it long term
Yeah.
too.
And so that would be one of the things. And I don't know that you need
It does
to
feel fine though. I've fallen into a pattern
Sure.
that feels comfortable
Yeah,
for me.
and I would
Right.
say most people can't do it long term, or it just becomes too much for social things or whatever. It's really hard
That's
to do.
where you do 80-20 maybe, or that's where you sort of think.
Sure, possibly. I think the other thing for a lot of people is then it's hard not to get into all or nothing, or for once they're reintroducing more carbohydrates, for that not to have a bounce back effect, right? And that just has to be done really mindful.
The reintroduction of carbs.
Yeah, the reintroduction of carbs, how you do it, where your carbs are coming from, even how many calories you're eating when you do, and or what your macros look like when you do, because it can be hard on the body, or you just have a bounce like, oh, now we have this sugar, and
Yeah.
and so
Well, because my body's gotten so used to just processing fat in that way, it might have forgotten.
yeah.
I think ideally, I'd like to find a way for my body to fluctuate between fat for energy and sugar for energy and be equally as.
I would say for most people, that's not to say I do have clients that I will actually prescribe keto, but
Really?
usually more so pre-diabetic or diabetic, purposes for the most part.
Yep.
Or potentially somebody who's really obese, which often will also have blood sugar, issues or insulin sensitivities.
Yeah.
I would say it's super helpful for that reason and can be a great tool. I probably off cuff is not somebody that I would give to the masses, because I would like to be able to help people get to all of their things with a overall balanced diet, because it's more sustainable. So I'd love to start somebody off and work on that. That is something that they can be doing long term.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
I'm sure there are people who are like, I'm a keto lifer, right? And maybe they will be, but I think that's rare.
Probably the minority.
It is. I think that's rare. And so I think, coming out of keto mindfully, I don't know why I'm correlating this, but it's like after a bodybuilder doing a show and like coming out of prep work. I think you have to do very mindfully.
Well, maybe we'll still have this relationship, hopefully, and we'll talk through that, because I don't think my original idea was like a month and a half to 2 months.
Yeah.
And now I've gotten so comfortable with it. I'm like, wow, why not?
I think the other thing to think about for you and or most people, I would say one is looking at magnesium, potassium,
electrolytes,
and B vitamins, and electrolytes. Those 4 things I think are really important to make sure you're getting.
Magnesium. What was it?
Potassium. B vitamins, all B vitamins, a balance of B vitamins, and then electrolytes.
So what should I do? Like supplements for those then?
Well, you can do supplements, absolutely. Or you can make sure that you're getting ketogenic foods. I just feel like a lot of people do keto, but maybe not. Maybe they're not getting all the things they need. Maybe they're not getting the leafy greens. Maybe they're not, you have to, because
people that do more of a carnivore diet.
Or like picking and being mindful of which like fruits and vegetables and seeds you're doing to make sure you're hitting all those things. It's just, I'll say it's easy to miss those nutrients when doing keto.
Sunflower seeds and pepitas too.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So,
go ahead.
Yeah.
You just said seeds, and I thought.
It sounds like, I've heard a lot of things with magnesium. Sounds like you're getting a lot of that. I think B vitamins, making sure, there's a lot of B vitamins.
What comes with B vitamins?
There's a lot, and they come from a lot of different things. So it depends on the B vitamin. You have B2 and B6 and B12 and like whatever. So they come from different things, but you can miss a lot of that because you get a lot of those through grains and other foods too. So taking a B complex could be be helpful, potentially, or just like making sure that we're getting well-rounded. You will get some B vitamins in some of your proteins, but maybe B12, right? And so you might not be getting some of the others. So like those are some of the things to think about.
Okay.
And also with both keto and the intermittent fasting, the electrolyte balance is important, because that can definitely get out of whack. The last thing I did not mention is also looking at cortisol levels.
Okay.
I guess that probably more so with intermittent fasting than keto, but it can raise people's cortisol levels. So that just, again, making sure you have good stress strategies and making sure that is processing, or the long term, and what that looks like. So those are kind of things just to like checks and balances. Doesn't mean don't do it.
Right.
It just means like things to make sure that you're doing it well and that you're getting everything your body needs. I think are a lot of those pieces. But you listed off a lot of the things. Oh, fiber is another big one. So gut health is a big one for keto.
Right.
Because grains, obviously a lot of fiber there, but also fruits and vegetables. And a lot of people don't do as many on keto because they are carbohydrates. Right. And so making sure you're getting enough of that fiber. You mentioned psyllium husks. So I was like, okay, you're like getting some added fiber there.
Yeah.
Obviously leafy greens are great too. And so anyway, there's layers of places you can get those, but I would say for the average ketoer, they may be missing some of those things. And so then you throw your microbiome off, and you're not feeding the healthy bacteria, then we're not getting enough healthy bacteria. Then we possibly have more depression and anxiety. We're not processing our food as well. We're not getting our nutrient absorption. That, so again, lots of layers to that. We're getting more gas and bloating. And then when you do add fiber, maybe you're getting more bloating. And so anyway, so it's also just like, are you getting all of the pieces? I mean, obviously you've done a lot of research on a lot of different layers of things, and you mentioned a ton of them. And so like you're hitting a lot of things, but I would say for an average keto, if they're just focused on like, fat and protein, they might be missing some key nutrients.
Yeah.
Same thing a little bit on the sustainability of intermittent fasting. I think you mentioned a ton of benefits. I think it has a ton of benefits. There's lots and lots and lots of studies behind it.
Right.
And so, on your, cell death and cell regeneration and mitochondrial health and all of, like energy and even reduction of calories, right? Like, and where you put it. But the flip side of that is some people overeat when they do eat. So they might have, they might overeat their food, which also can impact your gut health, right? So like not being able to process that as well. Or not having as much control over food in general, not even just amount, but like what they choose when they do eat, because they're overly hungry potentially, right? Or they get really heady about it, like, oh, I have to wait till 2, and then I get to eat this giant meal.
And then so they eat a giant meal, right?
So
I do that sometimes.
The processing of all that, we talked about this a little bit before, but we're dumping all of this food into our system. We're not processing enough of that food in that time period that your body then stores some of that potentially, right? Or you're then overdoing your calories. And then there's another layer to that. It's just the head piece of it is kind of on the more like disordered eating mindset of like,
I've talked to some people like that.
Thinking about food all day long.
Way too much.
While you're fasting, like
it becomes an eating disorder.
About like, I like planning every ounce of everything they're going to eat and thinking about food, like until 2:00, I can't wait till 2:00. All I'm thinking about is this and this and this and this and this. And it's taking over their brain.
I tend to let my body kind of tell me, like, on Sunday I did a 34-mile bike ride, or on Monday I did, and that's my normal fasting day. And I was like, man, I'm kind of feeling faint. So I chose to break that fast at like 24 hours instead of going through the night. So I try to like listen to my body and eat when I need to. I probably do eat more than I need to. Sometimes I'll put a lot of that protein in there, a lot of turkey. I'll take like a big old scoop there.
Well, and especially if you're trying to hit like, certain 128 grams or 180 grams or whatever you're saying.
It's like 180. That's a lot of protein.
Yeah, it's a lot of protein, and to fit inside of 2 meals.
It's an 8-hour window.
So then I'll say one other thing that potentially can be stress on your kidneys. So because your kidneys are only going to be able to process so much of that in a sitting, right? And so, in a day, but especially in like
8-hour condensed block.
Or in one meal, right? Like, are we loading 80 to 100 grams of protein into one meal?
Probably. Because sometimes I'll do way with it.
Yeah. So that's stress on your kidneys, which, short term may not be a big deal. Long term might be. So then you have somebody who, maybe their kidneys aren't functioning as well, then that wouldn't be the best option for them.
Okay.
Or we would need to like change how they're approaching that. So just other, things to pay attention to. It's kind of like, if I get a vegan client or something like that, nothing wrong with doing it vegan, but can we do it well? Can we avoid the processed foods? Can we make sure we're getting all of our nutrients? Can we make sure we're either taking supplements or being really mindful of which food we're eating so we hit all the things that you might be missing otherwise?
Heck yeah. You take people from where they are.
Yeah.
Take them where they are, and then you
Yeah.
move them towards optimization.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
don't know that the intermittent fasting is going to be forever either.
Yeah.
I kind of think it might be a ritual that I do, like folks do Ramadan.
Well, yeah.
Like where it's like once a year or once a month. I like a part of like just like
I have several clients who might do a
spring cleaning or something.
fast, every few weeks or once a month or something. And I mean, there's so many different ways to fast, whether it's daily intermittent fasting or whether doing a fast. But again, I think there's a right and wrong way to do a fast. And that's another thing, being mindful of coming out of the fast, because then if you're gorging yourself and not being mindful of the quality of food, it makes a difference too.
I've been trying having some beef bone broth and some fat, like an avocado, and some sauerkraut,
satiate you.
Yeah,
move
into it.
Yeah.
I learned that from someone.
Yeah, I love it.
Some of the research. Yeah. Okay, other things.
I mean, I think that's a lot of an overall look. I think, I guess another thing I will say too on all of that is, depending on the person's goals and where we feel like their metabolism is. So based on how much they're eating, which could be over or under, right?
Yeah.
It could go either way.
And that's in terms of calories per day.
Yeah. So I'll
and
say
their resting metabolic rate or something.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, if we can look at their RMR and AMR, then that's a better
get that from the
picture
DEXA scan. Yeah.
Right. So like that's beautiful, but a really good look. But let's just say we don't have that information. Then assessing, if somebody's having 1,000 calories a day and they need to lose weight and their body's stuck, well, their metabolism is probably slower. Now, granted, there could also be gut health and other things going on. They could have insulin resistance, whatever.
Right.
But again, depending on, I mean, there's layers to this because I'm going to look at somebody as a whole, but depending on what they have going on, I might say that intermittent fasting isn't the best for them because I might need them to be eating regularly to help increase their metabolism.
Okay.
So I might want that person to be eating every 3 to 4 hours to increase their metabolism. Again, whole foods, mindful foods, quality foods,
right.
Making sure, and then amount of food over the whole day. What does that look like? And it might be the same amount of food that I might give, Jane Doe over here, the same amount of calories, and maybe she is doing intermittent fasting, but maybe her body doesn't need that metabolism upkick. And a lot of that is just determined on, again, it's hard to just like name something off the bat, but like on how much they're eating, on their lifestyle, on their stress, on their lab work. I mean, microbiome, a lot of those things, but that's another thing that might weigh into like, how often are we eating and what do we feel like after we eat, right? Are we eating this giant meal and then we want to go take a nap? And do we need a nap every day? Like what is our energy like throughout the day? And so all of that weighs into like, how much do we need to be fueling the body, and keeping the blood sugar maintained? But blood sugar gets tricky because like, keto and intermittent fasting can be great for blood sugar, or they could be terrible. It kind of, it just depends on how you're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll go into my why for a second.
Yes, I think we should.
My why.
So let me just ask you, what big picture, I'll ask you that question I'd say before. If I could, from where you are right now, and you can imagine perfect health, and that is, that could be anything you want it to be.
Right.
It could be energy. It could be weight. It could be abs. It could be looking like a superhero. It could be, wanting to be 100 years old and running a marathon, whatever. I want you to describe what your perfect health is. No barriers to get there.
Yeah.
What would it
perfect
be?
health. Well, my dad got dementia really young, like in his 70s. I don't want that.
Yeah.
I don't want to have declining cognitive health.
Yeah.
So that's really important. I want to be like the Betty White. She was sharp all the way until she was in her hundreds, like those old ladies that are just sharp forever.
Yeah.
I want to be sharp forever. I also want, I want to be strong. I want my body to be physically strong, but not like I don't need to be a bodybuilder body.
Sure.
I don't need big muscles. I
Yeah.
want to
So
be able
how
to
would you
scratch my
how
back,
would you define, other than also with flexibility, how will you know you got there? How would you know that you're there?
I think the indicators I'm using now is like how much visceral fat do I have, because I did a lot of research on visceral fat, like
Yeah.
reducing toxic chemicals into your
Sure.
body and a bunch of other
Sure.
things. It'd
If
be
you
percentage
didn't
of body fat. It
Okay.
would be
If you
like,
didn't have a scale or a DEXA scan or percentage of body
what
fat,
would be? It'd probably be how I feel in my body,
okay.
right? Just feeling.
I mean, it could be aesthetic too, but
It's
like how
probably
will you know
around
you're there?
flexibility. It'd
Okay.
probably be that I'm flexible in my body. I would
Okay.
know it through the yoga poses that I feel like I'm
Sure.
strong when I do like a chaturanga.
Yeah.
I'm like moving through that feeling strong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can hold certain poses without feeling like, oh, this needs to end immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a flip dog or,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
To be able to do
Is that one of yours
handstands.
that you like to end quickly as a flip dog?
No, but when it
I'm
happens,
just
sometimes I feel stress on the arm, and
Sure.
I've had golfer's elbow for a while
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And I've had
I
different
have it too. I
injuries.
keep noticing every time I pick up the tee with this arm, I'm like, ah.
I have it, from
Yeah.
rock climbing or
I
from
do
the
too.
different things I
Luckily, it's in my
do.
left one, but yeah, I have it too.
So I want to be strong and not like have my body wear out
Yeah.
too quickly over time, to be able to have all my muscles support the joints in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Because I like to do adventures. I like to do
Yeah.
14ers in Colorado with my best friend. And I like to, I want to go on adventures. I want to be able to pick up my grandkids when my kids have kids. And like, all those things you mentioned earlier. I want
Yeah.
that
I
kind
love
of
those things.
active lifestyle.
So I'm gonna ask you another question that sounds like a silly question, but it's not meant to be.
Oh,
So
I want abs too.
okay, all right, yeah.
Just,
You want to see them?
it doesn't have to be forever.
You want to see
I
them?
call it
Because
the
you
lost.
probably have abs. So do you want to see them?
I call it the lost city of Atlantis. It's like under there somewhere. I want it to come up for just a little. It doesn't have to be forever.
Yeah, yeah. So
Maybe
that
for a
can
couple
be just to
months or
talk
a
about.
year. Just have it be out there and be like, I got 'em, baby.
So that could be, obviously not having seen you with your shirt off. That could be a layer of things. Could be visceral
And
fat.
it's subcutaneous
could-
fat, probably.
It could
And it
also
could be visceral.
It could be, or subcutaneous fat. It could also be skin health and like the elasticity of your skin.
Huh.
It could also be like what things you're doing. You're doing a lot of things that
I'm doing a
engage
lot
your
of things.
core,
Mhm.
but are we approaching the core from both a muscle progression standpoint and an endurance standpoint, right? And also, what is, the core is not just the front, it's also the back that supports the front. So what is the back and what are the sides and how
Yeah.
so I think also how we approach that. So like that'd be also like, what sort of core things are we doing? Sure, I mean, you're doing a lot of things that engage your core, but are they engaging the core in all of those ways?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Like is there something that is like doing endurance for your core? So like just to be silly, like
Long bike rides, the long runs.
yeah, probably not a long
No,
bike ride as much. So like more like maybe a really long planks or doing like on the ground.
5-minute
Not
plank.
that has to be this way, but like doing bicycles, but like really long, right?
Yeah.
Something that's gonna burn out the muscle, right? But like endurance of that.
Which
So-
is good for cutting down visceral body fat too, right?
So endurance of the muscle and
To
then,
failure, right?
Right. And then the other piece of that is yeah, right, to
The
failure.
bike, yeah.
Like to where like completely burns out, but endurance of the muscle. So think a marathon of the ab muscle, right? Like are we doing things that are engaging it for long periods of time?
Because that'll make it bigger.
Well, no, that's endurance of the muscle. You have fast twitch and slow twitch fiber. So then can we also do things that bulk it up, I'll say, whatever, that build the muscle? This is the muscle progression. Can we give it weight, right? So can you, do things where you're adding weight to it? So maybe doing a,
Weighted sit up.
yeah, like a weighted sit up possibly. Of course, there's certain ways to do that and not, but like, yeah, things that like add weight to it to help build up the muscle.
Muscle
so
progression,
we can
yeah.
tear down the muscle in two different ways, and can we like approach it from both sides?
Okay.
Yeah.
So what question? You were going to ask me a question that said might be weird, but
Oh, I did. I think I asked it. I don't remember, but I think I asked it.
what was that?
I don't remember now.
Remember, because I interrupted you when I said, I also want abs.
I know, but I think I asked it right then. I don't remember what it
Okay.
was.
Okay.
I don't remember what it was. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
So that's
Maybe they'll
I
come
think
back
my
to me.
why is around.
You're right. I didn't ask it.
Go ahead.
I knew it would come
I
back to me.
triggered it. Oop,
Yeah,
I
you
got
triggered it.
I got you. ADHD homies here.
Found
Yeah.
it.
Working memory is not our strong suit. Digressions.
Ooh, we came back to it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned wanting good brain health or not wanting
Oh,
dementia.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh man,
Dementia.
yeah.
So this is my silly question. Why do you not want it? Obviously, I could answer that question, but I want you to answer that question. Why do you not want dementia at 70? Or why do you want?
I want to. When I'm in my body, I want to be there
Why?
for my kids.
Why?
So I can show up and love them and have that relationship with them and have a relationship with the other people in my life. I think once that dementia kicks in, your quality of life, I think probably goes way down.
Sure.
Because you don't have those threads, that tie you to the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
So that is the deeper why. Not just that you don't want it, but why you don't want it.
Yeah, what kind of life will I
want that-
have as a result
You
of it?
want a quality life. You want the connections. You
Yeah.
want your kids to be able to have a conversation and
Yeah.
connect with you.
To be able to mentor them and support them, to be like an elder in the world in a healthy, supportive, positive way.
I have a 98-year-old grandmother.
Really?
And her long-term memory
Wow.
short-term memory isn't as good.
Yeah.
But when you're talking to her, she's sharp,
sharp?
and funny. I'm like, I want to be funny when I'm 98.
I want that
She's
too.
witty and
Yeah.
and she asks appropriate questions. Like it's a, whatever.
She's with you.
And she's with you.
I want to be
and
with
then she'll
people.
forget what she said 5 minutes ago. But I'm like, you're 98. You get that.
You get that. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. I think that's one of the things, like the fact that I can have a conversation and she can make me laugh. I think I'm like, yes, please. And laugh at herself and be like she loves getting pedicures and she's like, oh, this is just the best thing in the world, And
Oh my God.
I'm like, to be that happy at 98.
Yeah, to have that vigor.
Yeah.
That vitality.
That vitality.
I
Yeah.
think I want all the three things that you mentioned. I want longevity of health. I don't want diseases.
Yeah.
I don't want these lifestyle diseases.
Yeah.
And I want vitality.
Yeah.
I want to be a passionate person
Yeah.
and exciting and be able to say yes to things.
Yes.
Yes
Yeah,
to
yes, ma'am.
adventures. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
That's important to me. So that's my why.
Cool. I love it. Yeah. So, I think this is great. Obviously you've done so much research on health and you're pouring all of these things into it. I think for you specifically, I would make sure that you're getting all of your nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
I would, for fun, if nothing else, check your microbiome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and check all of those biofeedbacks, like work on the sleep and seeing if you can sleep all night without waking up.
Yeah.
I would, think about and plan for the keto and intermittent fasting and what that looks like long term and doing that mindfully. Making sure that you're having all the right foods or taking supplements for all your nutrients. And just kind of also, adding to your list, which it sounds like you do all these things anyway, but like making sure that you have, okay, what's, if you're checking off your exercise and your nutrition, are you also checking off that, stress relief and mindful? It sounds like I'm just saying, like making sure that that's a cognizant piece for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and watching for the overtraining. That was the other piece.
Overtraining. Yeah. I got that one.
And also even just long term of that, right? And what that looks like correlating with your food. So like, let's just say short of, I don't know if this is true, but let's just say short of your abs looking like Superman's abs. Let's just say you're happy in your body. Otherwise, with weight and all of that. Well, potentially think about the future. Does life shift to where you can't spend 3 hours a day doing movement, right?
Maybe.
Does life shift in that sort of way?
Yeah.
And if it does, is that shifting your body, calories in versus calories out sort of look? Is that shifting in your body? Do you need to shift how you're approaching food based on how your movement is shifting?
Yeah.
And so that's the other thing is, are you going to be doing 3 hours on a Monday in 20 years from now?
Maybe not.
And so it's worth thinking about what does sustainability look like and how does my nutrition play a role in that?
How do I map the input to the output?
Yeah. And some of that will be, it isn't for everybody, but for some of that might be a little innate, or like you can feel it out just based on hunger and fullness cues. I would say a lot of people, depending on their stress and relationship with food, don't have great hunger and fullness cues.
How do you nurture that, or how do you increase the awareness of hunger?
Yeah. So again, lots of layers to that too. I think there are things that ghrelin and leptin are your hunger and fullness hormones, right?
Okay.
And so I think there's ways to foster that. I think some of it is awareness and mindfulness. So
Eating slower?
eating slower, eating very present.
Because I heard that like it took 20 minutes for your stomach to tell your brain that it was full. Is that true?
Yeah, I don't know that it's an exact science, but yeah, I'm sure that's probably close to true.
Takes a little bit.
So setting your fork down between bites, which is really hard to do, but being very present. How many people eat food on the run? How many people eat food while working? How many people eat food in the car? How many people, and so
eat food intentionally.
Psycho-emotional connection with that, you are more likely to be hungry later if you weren't present to eating or eating too quickly.
Really?
And this is actually another experiment for people to try or notice. How often do you actually put food in your mouth when there's already still a little bit of food in your mouth? Most people are like, surely I don't do that. Most people do.
Really?
You're eating quickly. You take a bite. Maybe you swallow like
Dude,
90% of it.
My grandfather, I remember watching him eat, and he would just eat as fast as possible.
Yeah. And more likely than not, there was probably a little bit of the first bite still in his mouth. While he's
of course.
I
think I got some of that from those role models that like, you need to eat fast.
Well, and some of it is life, right? Like I don't
have a lot of time.
I'm a single mom with 2 kids. And
Yeah.
so, how often are
you just carving down something, running out the door,
putting their lunches together or
Yes.
whatever. And I'm like, ooh, practice what you preach, Ashley, whatever. Can we sit down at the table and eat?
Carve out that time.
And you can.
Yeah, you can.
Most people can eat mindfully in 10 or 15 minutes. But that also is precious time for a lot of people. But also, how important is it for you to absorb your nutrients and have good digestion and not be bloated and have a good relationship with food and all of those things? Is it worth 10 minutes? Probably.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a piece of that is just, making sure that we, even smelling our food before we eat, it releases gastric secretions that help us digest our food. And
really?
For some people, I would even say that that's actually part of, I have heard that is part of actually where some prayer over food has come into play, because you are being thankful for the food and sitting and looking at the food and being mindful over the food actually helps like release
your body,
these secretions. Your body prepares to eat.
That makes sense.
You salivate and which also helps break up food from the mouth. Then you break up food in the esophagus and in the stomach and in the intestine. But your mind needs to smell and be aware of it. If you're like yelling at a kid and entering in a spreadsheet and taking a bite, like, are we releasing all the secretions for that? Maybe not.
Thich Nhat Hanh wrote a book called Savor about mindful eating.
Yeah.
And in the mindfulness-based stress reduction system, one of the things you do is a raisin meditation. You basically take like 20, 30 minutes to eat one raisin, where like you'll smell it and you'll like roll it around, and then you're like, what does it sound like? And you'll think about you just put a lot of intentionality and mindfulness and time into savoring that one little thing. And I think the invitation is to do that with not only your food, but your life.
Yeah.
This is like a call to the present moment.
Intentionality of stress relief.
Be here now.
Absolutely.
Meet the present moment with what is. Don't be in the future. Don't be in the past. And
it's so hard to do.
Give it some time.
Powerful. Yeah.
But like what we eat is really important.
Yeah.
Like we're putting that in our body.
Yeah. Yeah. You are what you eat. Yeah.
You are what you eat.
Yeah.
Like what do they say? Every 7 years, every cell in your body will have been replaced with a new one. And where do they get the material for that?
Yeah. And I know everybody doesn't believe this, but there are also just like how, not even just in the health of the meat, but like how the animals are treated and their stress. There's also a lot of studies behind that. Then we absorb that stress.
So the animals we need to know their names. Yeah. We need to know that they had massages. We needed to know that they had a good
Thank you,
time.
Betty the cow.
Thank you, Betty.
You know, whatever.
There's that Portlandia skit where they're like
Bison.
getting the chicken, they're like end up taking them to the farm and meeting.
Yeah.
And
My son would cry over that. He'd be like, "No, I don't want to eat Betty."
I think there's truth to that.
I do.
Like
I do too.
the lifestyle of the animal and the
I do.
love
I
in the
think-
plants and all
I
that.
think there's energy in everything, and I think energy is transferred. And so I think,
We
that
get a
goes
little
down-
woo woo.
I know it goes down a hippie path.
It goes down a woo woo path, but I'm
And-
here for it.
Yeah, I'm here for
know?
it
I
too.
think
I'm
that-
like, you don't have to believe it, but I do believe in energy transfer.
But I think there is, at a basic level, like grass-fed and finished beef is different from
It is.
corn
And
lot
there's
finished.
studies behind that.
I think there's studies
absolutely.
behind that.
Yeah, there are.
So if you're gonna eat
Yeah.
butter or you're gonna drink milk,
Yeah.
I mean,
And free range chickens and all that. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. No, how they are treated, how they're raised, where they live, what they're being fed, all of those things make a big difference.
yeah,
And I think too, not to open up this tangent, another talk for another time, but like there are, I mean, I don't know about you, but growing up, how many kids did you know with food allergies versus how many kids do you know now or heard of with food allergies?
there's more of them now.
Oh, so many more. So many more.
You think it's lifestyle?
I think it's our food.
Our food.
Yeah. And how it's processed. And I do.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
All this processed food business.
Yeah.
I'm with Michael Pollan on it. Omnivore's
I am too.
Dilemma, man.
Yeah.
He wrote another
Give it to us
book that
straight
was
from
like
the earth.
the rules for eating.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah.
It's like a small
Yeah,
book.
I have. Yeah.
But it's like
I think I own
there
it.
needs to be like 2 or 3 ingredients in the
Yep.
food that you eat. You need to be able to pronounce everything.
Yep.
You need to.
I love it.
I love it too.
Yeah, I think it's important. I also feel like it just like grounds us in a deeper way. And, I don't know. You are
It ties us to the earth.
Yeah.
It ties us to, capitalism. We'll save the rants for another time. But I have a solid rant on capitalism and how it impacts pretty much all of our systems.
Yeah.
Whether it's food or mental
Healthcare,
health or
whatever.
healthcare
Yeah.
or
We could talk for hours
school
about
or
that. Yeah.
politics. It's like, ugh.
I know.
But
For sure.
I think that's been pretty thorough.
Yeah, it's cool.
I'm mindful that we've been at this for now 3 hours.
Have we?
It's almost 2.
Funny.
And I'd probably spend like another hour to do your life story. What I want to do is see if you want to do that now or if you want to put it off till the next time we talk.
Let me just see if I can look here. As long as I leave on time, I'm good.
Yeah.
So let me just look here. Because I got to pick up my kids from school.
Yeah.
I would say I could do another half hour. If I could be done around 25 after, like
Yeah.
almost exactly. Like if that works for you, it works for me.
I mean, we could talk for another 25 minutes. I probably won't go into the life story because sometimes that takes a while.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. Yeah. I don't care. I'm just saying I need to leave in a half hour.
I'll have our,
So I have a half hour, however that presents itself.
however we would want to spend that time together. Man,
Or we can be done. Doesn't matter to me. I'm just saying I have that flexibility.
heck yeah. I'm going to sit like this.
That's funny. I didn't, I had no idea of time passing.
Time flies.
It does. Yeah.
I put this thing down there and I've been kind of watching it and I've been like, this discussion is so exciting.
Yeah.
And I think
And
it's
I
so
love it.
important. It's so important.
It is important.
think
And I
this-
love it. I obviously talk about it all day long with clients, but in general, I just like, I don't know. It's easy to talk about things we're passionate about.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I believe that food is medicine. I believe that movement is medicine. And I believe that sleep is medicine.
Absolutely.
I believe one of the only things that isn't medicine is the actual medicine.
Right. Exactly. I 100% agree with that.
It's like,
yeah.
I don't know what to do with that.
Usually it's a Band-Aid, right?
Yeah.
And so that's another piece of all of this for me is it's about getting to the root. Because I'll have clients who come in that maybe they have, autoimmune diseases or thyroid diseases and, or whatever, or maybe they're not processing food or maybe they can't lose weight and they're doing all these right things. So like I want to get to the root of it. I don't want to give you some sort of medication
Band-Aid.
or, whatever. Without let's look into this. Not only where is it stemming from, but like how can we help the cells and the pathways work better? And I'm a big believer that the body heals itself.
I agree.
But you gotta give it a chance.
You have to create the environment for that
To give it a
healing to
chance.
take place. We have God love all the people in America and God love all the people, but this pill society, this like take a pill, you're all better. Go ahead and do whatever you want lifestyle wise. Just take this pill forever. I don't dig it.
I don't dig it
I
either.
think we could do better, and we
could do better.
Better squeeze, joy out of life.
Yeah.
We could better
Well, that's what I
live
just
these
feel like
days.
it is. It's, band-aiding all these things. And then like, I don't know, the chemicals and some of those things got to affect how like clarity of mind and just like, I don't know, like I said, it's all interwoven. And
It's all interwoven.
It is. And so I just don't feel like we're earthly beings and then there's a better way.
Yeah. I'm excited to continue a discussion with you about all of this. Yeah. And we'll both think about it. Like you'll think after you leave here, like how'd that feel for you?
Yeah.
And try to find a way, if we want to continue the discussion, like how can we structure it? Like this time we'll talk about this one aspect.
Yeah.
And part of it would be supporting me in my journey, but part of it would be like sharing whatever's most present and exciting for you within the realm of your domain, which is like personal training, gut health,
functional medicine
and diet.
Yeah.
I don't know that right now I'm gonna be able to get a GI tract thing, but I want to.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
I'll do a GoFundMe. Y'all pay for me. Do y'all want to know what's up in my poop? Like throw down some money and we'll get my poop investigated, y'all. You hear me?
Who wants to see his poop?
Who wants it? There's got to be some fecal philiacs out there.
Oh, gosh.
But I'm excited about this. I think it'd be really cool. And what we will do is like next time you come in, I'll set aside some time to do that life story because I think it's really important. I want folks to know you. I want to know you. Yeah. I love learning people's stories.
Yeah. Well, and it also like you mentioned, or we both mentioned earlier, it's also part of how I got here. And
it's your
why. Yeah.
But your why, I don't want to shortchange your why or give it 25 minutes because I think your why...
Yeah.
It could take an hour. It could take an hour and a half. I want it to have all that time. Like what happened when you were a kid and then how I tend to explore 4 things when I explore people's life. And the first is like parenting, your relationship, primary conditioning occurred in the home. What was home like? What was your family like?
Yeah.
What was your childhood like? What was your attachment to your caregivers like?
Sure.
All those type of things.
Yeah.
And then the second part is like, how did you feel unique or separate from the whole in your life? For me, it was like neurodivergence. For you, it might have been too. But for a lot of people, I think they did feel
unique.
separate.
Where's your place?
Yeah. How did you feel? Maybe isolated could be one way to look at it.
That's a good question.
Exactly. It could be empowering.
Yeah.
It could be like, how am I special?
Yeah.
How do I provide something that's not there that's needed? Or how do I feel isolated or alone? How do I feel kind of excluded?
Yeah.
And I think those are things that can influence how people are.
Sure.
The other thing is transformation, definition and redefinition. How have you defined yourself? Were you an athlete? Were you a nerd? Were you a stoner kid? Were you an outcast? Were you a band kid, and that changed throughout time. And what are the transformational like catalysts? Like,
and how you identify yourself. And also, which I think is cool as we age and grow up, how we want to identify ourselves.
How we want
because
to.
Sometimes we identify with something along the way by happen chance or because our parents put us in it or because we, who knows, whatever. We tripped over and landed in it, right?
Right.
But then as we get older, we like, all right, you know what? That's actually something that I talk to clients about when kind of exploring their why is how in perfect health, in that like wave the magic wand look. How do you want people to talk about you? Ooh. How do you want people to see you? Do you want to be seen as an athlete? Do you want to be seen as a crunchy mama? Do you want to be seen as this like healthy hippie? Do you want to be seen as, I don't know, an herbalist? I don't know, whatever. Like,
whatever it is.
Do you want people to look at you and be like, oh, I want to be healthy like her? Or like, God, I want to have killer abs like that girl. Like, how do you want other people to see you, and how do you see yourself, right?
Heck yeah.
And I 100% believe we can create those things.
Yeah.
Through all of the things were mentioned, not just with our community and with our food and with our exercise and with, our mind and, intentionality and yeah.
That
You get to
transformation
be
piece.
who you want to be.
Being who you want to be is really cool.
And if you're not who you want to be, why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
You can be.
You can be.
Yeah, you
And
realizing and waking up to your own agency, I think, is a very powerful thing. We're
Absolutely.
so influenced.
Yeah.
We're so influenced and controlled. Like most of our life is controlled by our parents, whatever happened to us in the past.
Yeah.
I was talking to Grant Potts. We have this philosophy book club where we've been doing these big questions of philosophy. And one of them was free will, fatalism, determinism versus destiny, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And what we both decided was that we have free will, but it's only like 1% or like a fraction of a percent. Because so much has already happened up until now that was outside of our control. And so much will happen outside of our control around the present moment and the future. But we have some agency.
We do.
We can determine the type of mindset that we have. We can determine the stories that we tell ourselves about what happens to us.
Yeah.
And that's so important.
It's actually a conversation that I have with my 8-year-old a lot.
Really?
Yes, because he was also neurodivergent, but he struggles with, which I feel like probably a lot of 8-year-olds probably do, but he struggles a lot with that I get to make the rules. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, you make the rules.
And they're like, why do I not get to make the rules?
Yeah.
And he says, it's unfair. And I said, well, actually, it's kind of fair because the rules were made for me when I was 8. You've
got the most experience.
I had to work my way up here.
Yeah, you put in your time.
And I'm like, and you get to work your way up too, buddy.
Yeah, you're
like,
at the bottom. You're in the mailroom of this thing.
Your way up. But I also tell him, you also get agency, right? I'm like, you actually get to choose whether to be a good person or not. You get to choose whether to be kind to your sister or not. Now, there might be consequences on your actions, but you get to choose.
Yeah.
You can choose who you are. Now, as a mom, I might have consequences for it or in life, and that's I correlate with him a lot. I'm like, if I'm speeding and I get a ticket, like that is a consequence.
Yep, it's a natural consequence.
So I was like, because he's always like, if you didn't give me consequences, Mom, then I wouldn't act.
The world will give you the outcomes. You got to decide whether or not you want those outcomes.
So I tell him, I'm like, there's consequences everywhere. Even if I took away all consequences, like that's not real life.
You can't take away all consequences.
You can't. I'm saying if I took away my consequences,
yours,
like. There are still consequences. You trip and skin your knee.
You forget to eat. You might be hungry.
Yeah, right. Like there's consequences.
You don't drink enough water. You might feel headache.
And that's part of growing up is figuring out, I guess, which ones are worth it, right?
Cause and effect.
Yeah. But I want to empower him, right?
Absolutely.
I want you to know
that's
that
agency.
You get to choose. You get to choose who you are. I'm like, yes, I think in this family we're kind, respectful people, and my job is to help create that. But ultimately, you get to decide.
And you can nurture. Though you can nurture in him because I think up there I've got a book by Alfie Cohen, Unconditional Parenting or Punished by Reward.
Yeah.
There's ways you can parent that create a transactional relationship where, my love, my happiness is transactional for when you do the things I want you to do. There's also like, how do I let the natural consequence be a happier community around you? If you help with the dishes and Mom's not as stressed because she's got one less thing to do.
There's
so the impetus
yeah.
is social in nature. So I think a lot of that is helpful. And it leads me to this other thing from that philosophy. I've learned so much from the philosophy. It's part of the body and the mind and spirit part of what I'm doing. Just like thinking about these things. One was the question about how to live a happy, flourishing human life. And it was there were 3 kind of ways Westerners looked at it. And one was virtue, like creating a human that was virtuous, had character, had all of these things that led to right action. The other one was the action itself needed to be right, and it didn't matter.
Yeah.
The person didn't have to be virtuous. You just identify the act. What did the person do? Was it good or bad?
Okay.
And then the other one was you looked at the outcome of it. And so that's the deontological, there's a virtue, and I forget what the middle one was. But Grant and I both decided we thought it was most important to focus on the virtues.
Yeah.
That we stack and we kind of develop and nurture the right ways to look at the world and to approach connection with our society and with ourself. And then when it came time to make a decision, our algorithm is tuned
Absolutely.
towards this like right action, this like flourishing life.
And so and there's so many layers to that too of, basically our values that we take from maybe our parents, maybe growing up, maybe our friends, whatever. But it ultimately, you're right. Then we base a lot of decisions based on those and actually create our own right and wrong, right? Like there might be a societal right and wrong, but then we have our own right and wrong just based on our values of like, I'll just say what makes a good person or like, whatever.
Right.
And whether we care about these things or not.
Right.
And that's one thing that I also talk to, both kids, but my son more, he's older, of just like, this is who I am and who I believe us to be as a family, right? Like this is important to me and this is who we are as people. And ultimately you get to choose, right? Just like with religion, my mom's actually a retired pastor.
Okay.
But she was always so open to like, I'm going to give you all of the information. You get to choose.
Yeah.
Like I'm not pushing you and I'm not making you do anything. I'm not pushing you into this. This is what I believe. But like, and she has a wide, I won't go into that either, but she has a wide, sweep of what she believes. But, I always appreciated that
letting them choose, giving you exposure, and then
and then you get to be your
that's
person.
your autonomy, that's your agency.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I think the one thing would be an encouragement to include spirituality into your life in some way, shape, or form, because I think it is helpful to have some higher power or some
it is
some universal whatever however you want to put it.
And having somebody, I guess, connected with it that has a belief that gives you some foundation, I think is helpful for most people versus being fish out of water from the beginning. And then also, now that I have some of this foundation, I can explore and whatever. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, this has been so much fun.
Yeah.
I really look forward to the next time we speak. We'll go through your life story. We'll think between now and then what a good topic would be to explore for like 35 minutes or an hour. And it doesn't have to be 4 hours every time. It doesn't, I like it. This has been great. I like long format. I like long format discussions.
That's great.
And I think we were thorough.
I loved the our just initial call because I was like, oh yeah, he'll be easy to talk to. Like our brains will bounce around just fine.
We got that compatible ADHD where we'll interrupt each other, but we won't get offended by it.
Yeah, and most of the time we came back at, both of us helped with that. We came back to things one way or the other.
Goodness.
That's cool.
When were you diagnosed with ADHD? Because women or girls or women tend to be underdiagnosed for the most part. For most things.
I'm totally guessing, but around 25, 22, something like that. So later.
Okay.
So yeah, I actually
in college or this was after college?
No, after college. So yeah, so I was like 25-ish. I could look up the year, but somewhere around there. I was a new dietitian. And I was working and this is partially speaks to the ADD-ness and partially, I don't know, it speaks to the time frame. But at the time I'm sure I had a computer, but I didn't have a laptop that I was working from. But anyway, I was taking notes on paper, right? With my clients. And I was scatterbrained. I had, a really half-assed filing system of what this looked like. So behind my chair was some sort of file system that in theory, the notes went in there. But of course, some days they didn't because, I don't know, squirrel, whatever.
Yeah. I know.
And so I had a girl come for a second session. Well, I don't know if I knew from digitally something told me we'd already had a session together or her name, but gosh darn it, I didn't remember anything. Nothing. And
couldn't find the paperwork.
Couldn't find the notes. And I was like, oh man. So
I need to look into this.
But I will say different now than then. But now I don't always have to have my notes. It's different now. I think I work differently and, whatever. I can give it.
Well, you probably scaffolded your life.
I also remember differently now.
Yeah.
Like I've worked on that in different ways. But anyway, Anyway, long story short, I gave her basically the exact same session as the first time.
Oh my God.
But she didn't stop me anywhere along the way. Couldn't tell you her name at this point. It's been a long time. But but then she went and complained. But it concerned me because that was the first time I had somebody complain.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the first time that I was like, oh, I don't remember. And so I was worried about my memory and my brain health. And my grandfather actually died of Alzheimer's. And I mean, I know I was young 20s, but still I'm like, oh, okay, we need this to be functioning correctly.
You and me both.
And so I went to a functional medicine practitioner. I mean, because in my mind, of course, this is also dietitian speaking, that I was like, all right, what nutrient am I deficient in?
Right.
Like, what's not working right? Because
Right.
it's not like I'd had a lifelong memory thing. And I was like, something, I don't know, what am I doing? That's like, so I was like, I just want another brain. And I really like the idea of functional medicine. So I went and saw this guy and I laughed because he probably did this, especially once you've been doing a field for a while, he probably, I can look at a client and already detect some things just by someone's body language and, how they're holding their body and, whatever. Like there's a lot of things you can determine by looking at somebody.
Yeah.
And so he probably looked at me and was like, okay, I know what we're going to lean toward first. So anyway, we did some blood work and he had me do some tests on some iPad, a couple of tests on some iPad. And he's like, so you scored 10 out of 10 on the ADD scale.
That's conclusive.
But actually, what's even funnier based on that, so I'd gone in and I gone into his office, and I can't remember what we'd already done blood work or whatever, but then they send you into not a waiting room, but like the room, the actual exam room, right?
Yeah.
And you have to wait for the doctor or nurse to come in, right? And so I'm sitting there and I was like, I wasn't anxious. I was just like, I feel like
you're moving your
some
body.
jumping jacks. And I was like laughing because I was like, God, if there's a camera in here, they're going to be like, she's a nutbag.
This one's definitely ADHD. They're like, checks out.
My brain wasn't even there. I wasn't even thinking about ADD. I was just like, they're going to think she's crazy.
Yeah.
Whatever. Because I wasn't even thinking about that. I just wanted him to help me with my memory. So I'm sitting there, but for all I doubt that. Who knows? Maybe they do have cameras in there. But anyway, that's when he came in and he's like, so you scored 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
And I also have MTHFR, which is a methylation thing, but we won't go into. But he was like, you need to take these vitamins, and he's like, and you need some Adderall or something. He's like, whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't take it anymore, but early
That's
then.
my next question. If you took any,
So early then, and this is pre-kids and everything, that day I left his office, filled the prescription, and I don't. But never had it ever. I know some people take it socially and stuff like that. Never touched the stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
No idea.
I haven't either.
Yeah.
It's
and
speed,
so
right?
exactly right. And so anyway, I knew friends who did it in college.
Yeah.
Whatever to study. But I was like,
that.
Coffee, it'll be just fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, which also I was like a nut job on coffee in college too, because I really didn't need it, and so it's like, hey, yeah, really good. Anyway, but it was a good study technique. Anyway, so I go and I went and met a friend, and I took a dose, and it was a low dose, so like 10 milligrams or something, but I took a dose, and I don't know how long it takes. It's obviously been 20 years now or whatever, but I took it, and I was like, oh my gosh, is this how normal people think? It's like somebody stuck a vacuum in my ear and sucked out all the fuzz, and it slowed down all the moving balls. I was like, I'm a genius. I was like, this is amazing.
Wow.
And for me, it helped with focus and attention. And I don't really think it was a memory thing. I think it was more of a focus and attention and the bouncing balls in the head and all of those things. And he said, I laughed at this, but he said, how far did you go in school? And I was like, well, I have my master's. And he goes, oh, that must have been so hard. And I laughed. I was like, because I'd never thought about it in that way. I'd never thought about it in that way. But I was like, but now that I'm held this mirror up to like what's going on with my body, then I thought back to college, and in my mind, I didn't think it was hard, but I had developed coping mechanisms for my brain.
Masking,
meaning
you're working harder than other folks.
Well, meaning that I got nothing from sitting in 3-hour lectures, nothing, right? Like nothing. I'm like, I'm like thinking about what I'm, I don't know, eating for dinner or whatever,
your
with my
brain's,
friends or
yeah.
like whatever. And I might write down a few key things, but was I connecting them to all the stories that these professors are saying about things? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't keep that focus.
Right.
And also, I thought back to plenty of times in my life when I might have lunch with a friend, maybe a friend I love. Maybe I'm super invested in what they have to say, but my brain was just bouncing off. I can't tell you how many times I would be gripping the chair to try to keep my brain focused on what they're saying. I'm like, I'm interested in what they're saying. What's happening here?
My brain not playing with me. Yeah.
But anyway, but I also knew in college that I wasn't great at taking notes and listening during. I went to every single lecture, but I wasn't great at absorbing from the lecture. Whereas I had friends who could go and listen to the lecture. They didn't need notes and they'd remember things, right?
Yeah.
But I would partner with people who took great notes. And so then I would just get copies of their notes and I'd study the notes.
Yes.
And study just fine. And so that was a coping mechanism, but I didn't know it was.
Yes.
Right? I had no idea it was. I was just like, I know I don't take great notes and I don't pay
It's
attention.
just as good a skill as the thing that, all those are great skills.
And I had great
Social.
short-term memory. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I could cram like a mother. I'm like, I can cram really well
Yeah.
and do great on the test and whatever. But I also think that during college, and we'll get into this another time, but like I, for a brief period of time in college, was not eating as well as I had been growing up or as well as I do now. And I think all of that impacts your brain. I know it impacts your brain.
Heck yeah.
And so I think I manage it so much better now because I eat well and I exercise well and I know like different nutrients that work well for the brain and all of
Hell
those
yeah.
things and I also can be mindful of coping mechanisms and how I use them. But to kind of answer a half of your question, so I took that for a while and I found it really useful, but then I got pregnant and I was like, I'm not going to take it pregnancy or breastfeeding, and then I had my daughter and same thing, and I really didn't want anybody who does, you're fine if you want to take it long term, but I didn't love the idea of taking a medication long term.
Yep.
And I don't love the possible effects of all of those things. And so I was like, nope, we're going to
Yep.
find another way.
I'm the same way.
And or be a little crazy, which I'm okay with.
Yeah. Well, we need all kinds of people.
Yeah, we do.
And I don't agree with the lifestyle drug thing.
Yeah.
Like, let's find
Yeah,
a way
I
to
don't
live with
I don't
who
either.
we are.
And that's,
Accept who we
coming
are.
back to like what I do and who I am. I believe there's good ways to do that.
Yeah.
I do. And I do believe that food is really powerful in all of that. So
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to share before we wrap up?
No,
We're at
nothing.
2:21.
Save the rest for next time.
Heck yeah. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
I leave this discourse really excited.
Yeah, it was so great.
This has been Phil Phails at Functional Health. Phil Phails at Functional Health with Ashley Eaves, RDN, CPT. She's a functional nutritionist. She's a registered dietitian. She's a personal trainer and a gut specialist. And this has been awesome. Wave to everybody.
It was so great.
Wave bye to everybody.
Thanks for having
You're a hugger, so can we end with a hug?
Yes, we can end with a hug.
Let's go. You just whip.
Oh, whatever.
Thank you so much.